One Piece Zhuanzhuan Fruit, Chapter 261-280. Chapter 261-War. I am the escort of this country. In times of crisis, even if I only have one breath left, I will fight to the end. He drew out his sword and blocked the golden hook of the sand crocodile. The half-orc Chaka looked at the sand crocodile with a resolute look. Thanks to Zone's inhuman resilience, Chaka at this moment was able to recover a bit of strength in front of him. Blocking the sand crocodile's attack wanted to delay time for the two of Vivi. But he also knew in his heart that this time, I'm afraid he will die. So what? You're a fool. Looking at Chaka, who sacrificed himself for others, the sand crocodile didn't have the slightest feeling in his heart, and even wanted to laugh a little. Why are there so many idiots in this world? Since I let you go, just lie down. Now you have to stand up bravely and waste your precious life in vain. Kanza, Vivi, hurry up and leave it to me. Although I am not his opponent, I can at least entangle him for a few minutes. Chaka ignored Sand Crocodile's sarcastic words. Without looking back, he said to the two behind him. Looking at Chaka's back, Vivi lowered his head slowly. After a moment of silence, he bit his lower lip and grabbed Kong Za's hand beside him, and ran towards the battlefield without looking back. Damn, Desert Treasure Saber. Sand Crocodile pushed Chaka away from him, who was entangled with him, and then activated his ability, and the yellow sand appeared out of thin air and gathered again into a treasure saber. Then he waved towards the backs of Vivi and the two of them. Don't be delusional, your opponent is me. Chaka held the middle sword tightly and smashed the desert sword, and then his face was once again blocked in front of the sand crocodile. The hope of this country is in your hands, Princess Vivi. Chaka fulfilled his oath and dragged the sand crocodile here. And Robin, at the show. Not to mention how the two of them are here. Over there, Vivi and Kongza walked out of the door, and what caught their eyes was the king's army, who was preparing for battle in a panic. The second unit calls the headquarters. Call the headquarters. The fourth line of defense has been breached. The rebel army has passed through the central square and is about to reach the palace. Vivi. Now, seeing that the rebel army was about to rush over, Kongza turned his head to look at Vivi and asked for her opinion. Vivi just now is to move the battlefield, at least to be farther away from the square. Don't be in the realm of an explosion. The leader of the rebel army, and the cooperation of Vivi, the princess of the country, the chance of success of the plan is still very high. But what Vivi didn't expect was that the fighting power of the rebel army was so strong. In an instant, he had reached the gate of the palace. Now it's too late to go as planned. Vivi clearly thought of this. No, it's too late. Looking at the bustling king's army below, Vivi bluntly forgot his previous plans. Standing on the high platform, he opened his mouth and shouted, "Raise the white flag and surrender. Now surrender to the king's army. Let's stabilize the situation first." Quote question mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Vivi's voice is not too small, and his heart is eager. If he can stop this war at this time, even if his voice is completely hoarse, Vivi is willing. And the king's army below such a hard roar naturally heard it. After all, the distance between the two sides is not too far. But it was this that attracted the exclamations of the king's army. Surrender! Surrender! Princess Vivi made us surrender. What will this country be like after surrendering? There was a lot of discussion among the soldiers, causing an uproar. At this moment, a few sharp-eyed soldiers saw the man standing beside Princess Vivi. Wait, look over there. It's Kongza. How can the leader of the rebel army appear here? If there was still an uproar just now, when the royal army saw Kongza next to Vivi clearly, there was an uproar within the royal army. Yelling like a frying pan. Whether the country has been defeated, such thoughts appeared in the mind of the king's army. But it hasn't waited for them to think much. Then I heard Princess Vivi above and shouted again, "Everyone listen to me. We don't care whether this war is won or lost. I only hope that you will stop the war now." Kanza on the side also shouted in cooperation, "I will inform the rebel army. This war is meaningless. There is no reason to continue fighting. Don't sacrifice in vain. Raise the white flag, please," the Vivi above shouted hoarsely. But at this moment, everyone in the field could only hear a rumbling sound coming from a distance. At the same time, there was a loud cry. "The king's head is in sight. See the clock. Oh oh oh. If you haven't seen him, hear his voice first. Even the rebel army that has broken through the 4 lines of defense has arrived. These guys." Kang Za's eyes sank as he heard the familiar shout. At the moment, he couldn't care less. He took off his striped shirt with desert characteristics and tied it to his weapon, a long sword. Then he ran towards the bottom, ignoring the surrounding king's army and rushing in front of them along the way. The area between the rebel army and the king's army. He stood still, without breathing, and raised his weapon directly. The clothes tied to the sword flew up in the wind. In this desert country, he poses lightly. It's shameful to surrender, but it's worth even being reviled by thousands if it's to avoid a pointless war. It is also a drama, a long sword, a weapon forged to kill, and finally turned into a flagpole of peace. And how much blood was on the clothes that served as the white flag? Forging swords into plows. The war was originally provoked by him. Great irony. But Kang's purpose was achieved. When the rebel army rushed to the front, watching their leader rise naked and hold the flag, he suddenly stopped. "This is a white flag. The king's army has surrendered. Mr. Kangza." As the entire rebel army approached, one of his subordinates looked at Kangza in confusion. What's the situation? "The war is over. Everyone calm down. Put down your weapons. The king's army has no intention to fight anymore." Kangza, who was wearing a shirtless shirt and holding a white flag and a long sword, shouted at the king's army and the rebel army. A sentence is divided into 4 paragraphs, but only one paragraph is important. "Lay down your weapon." Seeing the 2 sides in the arena gradually calming down along with Kangza's words, Vivi at the top heaved a sigh of relief. No fight. Tears streamed down his cheeks involuntarily, but Vivi's mouth held a slight smile. Chapter 262-Sand Crocodile. Kanza stood between the 2 armies holding the banner of peace. The field gradually calmed down, and Vivi breathed a sigh of relief. But there was one thing Vivi didn't take into account. The 2 armies were at war, not to mention the king's army, just the rebel army was a mixed bag. Everyone is ordinary residents, because there is no rain, coupled with the plan of the sand crocodile, they waved their arms and followed Kangza. Under the circumstance that most people's origins are unknown, who can guarantee that there will not be 1 or 2 guys mixed with bad thoughts? And as a conspirator and the leader of an assassination organization, how could Sand Crocodile not consider these things? Sand crocodiles have been in this peaceful country for several years. How could it not do a little bit of action? Seeing that the scene gradually subsided, the 2 sides are about to reach a friendly meeting. I saw a soldier in the king's army wink at the people around him, and then lowered his head with a cold smile on his face. Then he raised his muzzle and aimed at the prominent Kangza and fired. Bang! After the gunshot, the soldier raised his head, and the expression on his face changed instantly, nervous, frightened, and uneasy. The role of a soldier who accidentally fires under tension is played to the fullest. Mr. Kangza, the rebel army suddenly became anxious. And Vivi above looked at Kangza, who was slowly falling down, with a stiff smile. He thought that his heart was falling, but it didn't stop. Fell directly into the bottomless abyss. It's BW. In a short time, no more than half an hour before and after, Vivi's heart was really wonderful, like ups and downs. It's too late to say anything now. The leader of the rebel army, Kangza, was shot and killed by the king's army. Although Vivi knew that this was a conspiracy of Sand Crocodile, the rebel army on the opposite side did not know. In addition, there are sand crocodiles, subordinates mixed in on both sides. In terms of words, you have to fight, you have to fight if you don't. What's more, there was the sudden sandstorm that blew up the sky, obscuring the sight and blocking the sound. It was announced that the battle between the sand crocodile and Chaka in the rear had also been decided. Everything is over. Vivi clenched his hands, lowered his head, tears fell on the ground drop by drop. Stop. It's a tough fight, miss. Robin quietly walked to Vivi's side. Chichibukai, on the bright side, the sand crocodile is not suitable to appear at this time, plus the need to separate the mind to control the sandstorm, so he sent Robin out to see how the situation was. The extravagant caution unique to conspirators. Seeing the girl kneeling on the ground and being tricked by fate in front of him, Robin sighed in his heart and said, for some unknown reason, it's over. With this sandstorm here, they can't even see their friends. Let alone blocking. There are two explanations for this remark. At best, Robin is reminding Vivi to stop the sandstorm first. At worst, Robin is taking the initiative to attract Vivi to a dead end. But one thing that can't be changed is that Robin is concerned about Vivi. Hearing this, Vivi wiped away her tears, raised her head and glanced at Robin next to her. Want to see what she means from it. But as an old fox, how could Robin let a chick like Vivi see any emotions? Even if it did, it was what Robin wanted Vivi to see. A distant but soft smile rejected everyone. Some investigation, he found nothing. Vivi wiped away tears and stood up, glanced at Robin next to him for the last time, and ran towards the door. Want to go down with the sand crocodile? Not to mention how Vivi behaves here. At the same time, in the square, at the edge of the battlefield. Zoro on his shoulders. As soon as he arrived, he saw the yellow sand in the sky and the two groups of people fighting. There's nothing to stop it. Alan stood still, and observation hockey instantly opened, sweeping across the entire battlefield. Want to find Vivi, or Nami and others who arrived early. Hey, scar-faced bastard, you put me down first. Hearing the sound of fighting in his ears, Zoro looked at the scene behind Alan, holding 3 knives in his hand, and said, shyly. Let you down. I told you to rest and put you in a safe place, because you don't want me to take you like this. Without stopping observation hockey's investigation, Alan looked for following the trail of Vivi Nami. He opened his mouth and returned with Zoro on his shoulder. How can I rest at a time like this? Zoro shouted, struggling. Be quiet, you green-haired bastard. I'm looking for someone. He exhaled a long breath of smoke. Although Alan scolded impatiently on his face, 2 or 3 laughter rose in his heart. How could Alan pass up this opportunity to hold on to Zoro's embarrassment? Zoro dares to fry again later. Alan can use this as a reason. When I was in Alabasta. How? Who are you calling a green-haired bastard? You scarred face. His hands clenched suddenly. Zoro's face was full of anger, but his body was honest. You thought I was walking slowly just now, but now that I'm at the place, put me down quickly. Zoro felt a little more shameful when he stayed in this posture for a while longer. Okay, I'll let you down when I find someone. Now you can help me pay attention to the situation around me. Alan closed his eyes and said casually. He's looking for Nami's trail. Although there is a weapon-like observation hockey in hand, there are so many people in the field now. Everyone has their own breath, and Ellen doesn't know exactly which direction Nami is in. It is not easy to find Nami accurately. Good search. I don't know if it's because Nami and the others haven't arrived yet, or Ellen is sloppy. This roughly rummaged through the entire battlefield, but he didn't see a spot of light that matched Nami's breath. Alan frowned. Back observation hockey. Alan rubbed his temples to relieve his tired spirit. Then turn it on again and want to expand the range again. But this time, Alan saw something interesting. Forget about searching Nami and the others. Alan focused his attention on the tall clock standing in the center of the square. Looking at the figure inside the big clock with a gun aimed at something, Alan looked in the direction his gun was aimed at. This check does not matter. Is this so vicious? I really admire it. Looking at the pile of gunpowder kegs that could blow up the entire square, Alan raised his eyebrows and was speechless. Chapter 263-Life is like a play. Looking at the pile of powder kegs that could blow up the entire square, Alan fell silent. He took off the cigarette butt in his mouth and threw it on the ground, carefully stomping on it for fear of leaving a little spark. If this is set on fire, one of the people in the field will be counted as one, and if they are not killed, they will have to be buried alive. Have you found anyone yet? Zorro on his shoulders didn't find anything wrong with Alan, and asked when he looked at Alan's movements. Forget it, Alan said perfunctorily, writing indifference on his face. Zorro frowned, realizing that things were not simple. Did something happen? It's there. No, it's nothing. Stop arguing. I'll look around again. Alan closed his eyes again after saying that. Doesn't make sense to tell Zorro about this. He wouldn't have any good solutions, and he said it for nothing. Worry about rebirth in vain. You scar-faced bastard. Alan was definitely hiding something from him, and Zorro could sense it no matter how sluggish he was. But I didn't care too much. Since Alan didn't take the initiative to explain to him, it means that Alan either has a grasp of it, or there are indeed some problems. Alan is also not sure of the perfect solution. Zorro can't get involved in either case. Although he was a little unhappy about Alan's concealment from him, he didn't ask anything. Vigilantly observed the surrounding situation and waited for the moment when Alan found someone. And over there, Alan perfunctory to Zorro afterwards. With his eyes closed, he turned on observation hockey to search for Nami and the others, and at the same time divided a small part of his mind to think about how to solve this matter. I don't know if Vivi knows about this, Alan thought to himself. The matter of explosives hidden here in the square is easy to solve, even if it is easy to solve. Good solution because now the enemy's location is known. Killing that gunner, without the trigger to fire, even the most powerful weapon becomes a mallet. It's hard to say because Alan doesn't know if Sand Crocodile has a backer. After solving the trigger, I thought my side was safe, but I didn't expect that there was a spare ignition device. When the time comes, one of them counts as one, and they all have to sing the Divine Comedy. Might as well consider a little more cautious. This matter is not afraid of 10,000. Think a little more at this time, and then there will be less crisis. To put it aside, this situation can be regarded as embarrassing for Alan. To find Nami to join her, to find Vivi to help her, and to find the trigger hidden in the square. It is important to be light or heavy. If it wasn't for that ability, Alan would have cut himself into 3 pieces. Gossip here. If I were a sand crocodile, where would I hide someone? Alan's eyes were closed, and the seasoned observation hockey enveloped the entire square and searched carefully. It's like the person who is drinking bubble tea is patiently looking for the pearls that belong to him in the cup. This time, the ratio of mind and spirit has changed again. Alan focused most of his attention on the nooks and crannies in the field. As long as you find someone hiding, sneaking around, not fighting or quitting, then tag him with the trigger. Just wait until someone else is found to solve it in one pot. After saving the time to find other people, he was waiting for Alan to find them now. Wasting time. But just as Alan searched carefully, in his observation hockey, he saw on the towering wall in the distance, Sand Crocodile grabbed Vivi's neck in his hands, put her outside the wall, and said something sarcastically. The next convenience is the ground with a drop of more than 50 meters. Is this going? Alan quickly opened his eyes. The shoulders loosened and Zorro dropped to the ground. What's the matter? Zorro over there was still wondering about Alan's actions. Then he saw Alan pointed to the direction of the sloping wall, then lowered his head and hurriedly pulled the corner of his clothes. How is your injury? Can you throw me there? Zorro looked in the direction of Alan's fingers, and naturally understood that this was not the time for jokes. He lowered his head and thought about the distance between the two sides, shook his head, need to be closer. Okay, let's go, Alan said decisively, then pulled Zoro back on his shoulders with a skillful force, and then ran in Vivi's direction. There is no way. Alan's physical fitness is here, although the persistence is strong, but the explosiveness is not enough. Just ran over like this, and Vivi was probably cold by the time Alan got there. No, if he really ran over, it is estimated that Vivi might still have some breath left when Alan gets to the place. Almost. And now having Zoro around can give you an acceleration and save a little time. As for why Alan didn't let Zoro come down and run by himself. Slow speed when he was just rushing towards this side almost cost Zoro half his life. Now let him follow Eren to Vivi's side, he really doesn't intend to let Zoro live. Alan and Vivi quickly narrowed the distance. In the blink of an eye, he reached the middle of the square. Don't talk about saving energy at such a critical moment. Alan's body was weak, and he still carried a Zoro on his shoulders, and he didn't save his energy at this moment. I ran to the point of sticking out my tongue. But now is not the time to be discreet. In observation hockey, seeing the sand crocodile closing his mouth, Alan secretly thought that it was not good. Asked Zoro on his shoulder, is this distance enough now? It's okay to be uninjured. Zoro was silent. It means that the distance is not enough. Okay. After receiving such a reply, Alan was also stern, his tongue retracted, and he clenched his teeth. He held his breath and left a breath in his chest to avoid loosening his strength. Force yourself to add some explosive power. Really. Anaerobic exercise. At this time, Alan's footsteps have sped up a bit. If there is still a person on his shoulders, I am afraid he can fly. Although the speed of such a desperate rush has been increased, Alan's body is unable to accept such a sudden situation. The heart is beating wildly, making people worry about the kind of wild beating that will explode in the next second. He had clearly stopped breathing, but a strange feeling came from his lungs, and he wanted to hold his chest unnaturally. It seemed as if an iron rod full of barbs had been forcibly inserted into the trachea, and then it was yanked outwards fiercely. That hot feeling made Alan a little unbearable. But fortunately, no matter how far the journey is, there is always an end. With the sound of Zoro on the shoulder, it's all right. Alan stopped at his feet, and the breath held in his chest finally rushed out. Chapter 264-come. Just right. Seeing that the sand crocodile on the wall let go after saying something, Princess Vivi couldn't get rid of the effect of gravity. It fell rapidly towards the ground, wanting to run into the warm embrace of Mother Earth. But how could Eren, who had reached the designated position at this time, watch Vivi's fragrance disappear? Accompanied by Zoro, okay. Threw Zoro onto the ground in front of him with a skillful effort. Reaching out and grabbing Alan's collar, Zoro sparred with his arms, and his waist exploded with an astonishing force. No knife flow, Peregrine Falcon. An explosive roar sounded, and the sound was like thunder. Even in this battlefield, there was a place for his voice. Then I saw Zoro take off his hands. Alan seemed to have really turned into the Peregrine Falcon. Vivi at a speed that the normal human eye can't keep up with. The timing is just right. Vivi over there was already ready to die. But who knew that after a burst of pain in his shoulders, he smelled the smell of alcohol and cigarettes that were still looming in the strong wind, and opened his eyes to see Alan's chin with knife wounds and stubble. Right hand up, left hand down. Here comes a hero to save the beauty. Alan. Vivi's eyes were full of joy and emotion. At this time, everyone has to be moved. Second division. And after seeing the figure of the person coming, the sneer on the face of the sand crocodile above suddenly froze. Just watched Eren rescue Vivi, who should have fallen to his death. I am sorry, Sand Crocodile. Your lord. The two of them looked at each other, recalling the terrifying murderous aura in Sand Crocodile's eyes just now. Alan chuckled twice in his heart. Then he whispered to Vivi in his arms, hold me tight. With his free left hand, he awkwardly pulled out a long knife from his waist, twisted it slightly and replaced it with the blade down, and inserted it into the wall. It brought out a spark all the way, and finally stopped steadily in midair. Well, Alan, looking down at the ground with a distance of at least 10 meters below, Vivi raised his head and looked at Alan. What should we do now? Also looking down at the ground, Alan raised his head and looked away, not daring to look into Vivi's eyes. This TM's embarrassing to die for. I thought it would be as smooth as using Kasai Lu. Who knew that it was so weak? How could it still stop in the air? It's okay. I can go down. I felt the pain in my left arm, and the strength that I couldn't hold. What else can Ellen do? I just felt that the speed of the descent was a little slow, and I should have just let go and stepped on the wall to slow down a little bit. There is still this embarrassing situation. This face today. After complaining in his heart, Alan let go of the powerlessness of his left hand. After buffering a few steps by the wall, it landed firmly on the ground. Until this time, the feeling of exhaustion from the rush just now came up. Let go of Vivi in his arms and rubbed his left arm, which was aching, without revealing a trace. Alan supported his knee with one hand and only felt a burst of retching in his mouth. Alan, are you all right? Looking at Alan, who was retching, Vivi was secretly anxious about the war and the explosion, but moved to Alan's side worriedly. No, it's nothing, it's just vomit tilde. Alan originally planned to say a few words that didn't need to worry too much, but his body honestly reflected the current situation. Sorry, in order to save me. Looking at Ellen's current situation, Vivi lowered her head and wanted to say something else when she saw a hand stretched out in front of her and swayed left and right. Ellen is really speechless now. Can only wave at Vivi to show that I have nothing to do with myself, and I don't need to blame myself too much. Vivi's mouth curled into a warm smile, looking at Aaron, who was still retching, and patted his back gently. Hope to feel better. Today, this is really a lifesaver. He didn't refuse Vivi's gentle pat on his back. Alan thought with emotion. It's a long-lost feeling. Alan, it's great. I thought Vivi just couldn't catch up with. Just as Alan propped his knees and lowered his head to pant. Then I heard a woman's sigh of relief. Looking up, who is it if it's not Nami? And it's not just Nami. Sanji, Usopp, Chopper are members of Usopp's rescue team, Zoro with injuries, and Vivi standing beside him. The current Straw Hat Pirates has all members except Luffy. It's already assembled. The longer sleeve was lightly folded, and his slightly trembling left hand was hidden in it. Alan reluctantly suppressed the physical discomfort, looked at the people in front of him and said, "Everyone's assembled except that guy Luffy." Sanji took out a cigarette, answered, and finally said, "By the way, give me back my lighter, you bastard." "Don't worry about that idiot Luffy, I believe he will find this place according to his intuition." He casually threw the lighter in his arms that he thought was his own to Sanji. Alan glanced at Vivi beside him and spoke about the current situation. "Although Luffy hasn't come over now, we can't wait for him to come over and act. There are 3 things waiting for us to complete." Alan took out a cigarette while talking, and beckoned to Sanji to come over lighter. After lighting it, I didn't smoke, and I stuffed the lighter back into my arms. Then, as if he didn't see Sanji's frowning expression, he continued, "The first is to stop this war. This is very important, but it's not something we can accomplish now, so we can leave it behind. Secondly, there are some explosives buried in this square that are enough to make us all go to the sky, which needs to be solved." After speaking, Alan looked at Vivi. Vivi naturally understood what Alan meant. I went up and explained how to. That's it. At this moment, Vivi, who was originally anxious, desperate and helpless, calmed down inexplicably when facing the Straw Hat Pirates in front of her, and a familiar smile appeared on her face again. "But don't worry too much about this matter. I have found the person who ignited the fire." After flicking the soot on his hand, Alan said the trigger on the big clock found by observation hockey just now, as well as a few more suspected guy. Oh, when did you find it? Usopp yelled for a while. Don't worry too much about these things, say the third thing. Alan ignored Usopp's question, and planned to say the third thing after a perfunctory sentence. But at this moment, I saw a figure rushing over from the Chaos Army, shouting that Alan was going to say the third thing, fight the flying sand crocodile. Chapter 265 Luffy vs. Sand Crocodile. Say Sao Mengd will come. Just when Alan was about to say the third thing, he heard a person rushing over from the far side of the battlefield. The mouth shouted, beat the flying sand crocodile. Not Luffy. Hey, I just said that this idiot can find a place. He threw away the cigarette butt that was left in his hand, and Alan chuckled as he looked at Luffy who was running towards him. That idiot. Zoro folded his chest and chuckled. Okay, since Luffy has arrived, leave the matter of hitting the sand crocodile to him, king to king, Admiral General, shaking the hem of his trench coat. Alan is rare and handsome. The rest of the people divided into several teams to find the trigger, first solve the matter here in the square, and then wait for Luffy to kill the sand crocodile before we stop this war. Was a smile on everyone's face. Okay. My words are rarely moving. Sand crocodile is accompanied by a more difficult woman. I'll follow Luffy to block her. At this time, Luffy was also within the range of everyone. Since the goal has been set and Luffy is here, let's go. Looking at Luffy galloping towards him, Alan made his final plan. After speaking, he took the initiative to take 2 steps forward to meet him. Captain. Yo, Luffy, the sand crocodile is not an easy enemy to deal with, you do it well. Grip it. God was pitiful, Alan didn't show any attacking moves. There was even a rare sincere smile on his face. In my heart, I was also ready to face a powerful enemy with Luffy, but I knew whether Luffy's mind was a little stupid by Alan's finger or something. As soon as Luffy saw Alan's face, he punched him directly. The smile on Alan's face hasn't changed. Scar-faced bastard. Pistol. Also TM has to be with a trick. He didn't have the slightest bit of strength, and called directly on Alan's face. It happened so suddenly, who would have imagined such a situation? Alan didn't even respond to an effective block, and was directly punched. At this time, if it was someone else, Alan might still be a little wary, but it was Luffy. Who would have thought such a fool would make such a sudden move? No hindrance. Boom. This was the sound of Alan flying backwards and hitting the wall. Luffy, this is Nami. The situation was so sudden that the tone of voice was a little frightened. What are you doing? He reached out his hand to stop Luffy who was about to give a shot. Sanji was so surprised that the smoke from the corner of his mouth was frightened. If he didn't know clearly that Mr. 2, who could imitate in BW, was indeed defeated by himself, Sanji would have wondered whether Luffy had changed from the enemy. The reaction of the friends around him stopped Luffy's movements. The original anger in my heart stopped, and I scratched my head and looked at a few people in confusion. Are you impersonated by the enemy? You still have the face to talk. Nami looked grim. Why attack Alan all of a sudden? Zoro asked aside. Inside the fence, Luffy said in a lower voice. Didn't I explain everything to you? The plan. That's the plan. Nami's face became more and more hideous. Is that the case? Luffy tilted his head in confusion. That's what happened. You idiot. It just so happened that Ellen also came out of the smoke. Somber complexion. Gonna be killed. The timid duo screamed. Looking at the dark-faced Ellen, Nami shot a peerless divine fist directly at Luffy's head. Apologize to me. You idiot captain. I'm sorry. Apologizing when asked to apologize, Luffy still listened to Nami's words. A standard taxi got off the seat and expressed his apology to Alan. You idiot. Alan's voice was low, his face darkened as if there were monstrous flames burning behind him. Walked to Luffy's side and looked at Luffy with a cute face. I'm afraid this guy hasn't reacted to what's going on until now. He clenched his hand, and Alan raised his fist slowly. At this moment, the body, which was somewhat weak, was revived again. Human potential is limitless. He raised his right hand high, and he saw that the strength of his body was about to accumulate to the top, and this fist containing anger was about to fall. Alan's strength suddenly leaped. He lifted it heavily and lowered it gently, pressing it on Luffy's straw hat. The expression on his face gradually calmed down. Forget it, it's also my fault. I've forgotten it for so long. No matter what, I can't do anything to my partner. Touching the precious feel of the straw hat, Alan stretched out his left hand and handed it to Luffy. Sorry, Captain. Sanji raised his eyebrows and looked at Ellen in surprise. Nami smiled knowingly. Haha, I forgive you. Seeing that he was not beaten, Luffy had a big smile on his face. Holding Alan's hand, he stood up from the ground. Hey, don't be so shameless. Nami walked to Luffy's side with the mentality of when the incident ended, and after hitting him lightly on the top of the head, she turned the matter over. Okay, since it's over, let's continue to act according to the plan. Alan sighed, not knowing whether to rub the cheek he had just been beaten or his left hand. Right, Sand Crocodile. Alan's voice gave Luffy a wake-up call. Look up. I looked at Sand Crocodile, who had watched a good show. The two looked at each other, and when Luffy found the figure of the Sand Crocodile, his fighting spirit was instantly ignited. Sand Crocodile. His hands extended to the limit and grabbed the wall under Sand Crocodile's feet. Then it flew into the sky and hit it directly. Rubber rubber. Clock. He didn't care if he could hit it or not, and he didn't hear Alan's obstruction behind him. Wait for me, Captain Bastard. Can you beat him? Luffy, who ran straight through the Sand Crocodile without the slightest obstruction from above, Alan sighed helplessly. Let's get started. I'll go see Luffy's side. After explaining the funeral, after the final plan, Alan didn't have the slightest nostalgia. Run straight up the steps. Going to help Luffy, or just look at the woman next to Sand Crocodile. Alan always felt that she was a little mean, but not that. But there was no intention to stop Alan in the desert at that time. Chapter 266-Duel. Because of Alan, Luffy hadn't officially fought Sand Crocodile at this time. Every move relies on the blood in his chest. When Alan was rushing towards the palace, he saw Luffy shouting moves and attacking the Sand Crocodile. Rubber rubber. Pistol. Rubber rubber. Circular saw. Rubber rubber. Stamp. Called flat out of the move. But it didn't help. Luffy didn't have hockey, no sea stone, or even the truth that water beats sand. After some attacks, the Sand Crocodile did not cause any damage except for the yellow sand that filled the sky. Crocodile looked at the clown jumping up and down beside him with such a disdainful expression, and broke his body in vain. It didn't even mean to dodge at all. Speaking big and trying to knock me down, Straw Hat Luffy, is it just this level? With a cigar in his mouth, Crocodile's words meant a strong sarcasm. You bastard. Rubber rubber. Bazooka. Luffy was very angry. But still, that sentence is still of no use. Rubber rocket pierced Sand Crocodile's body. Luffy's arm did not retract, but directly grabbed the wall behind Crocodile. Then he took a spear, opened an eye on Sand Crocodile and came behind Crocodile. Hey, Luffy, don't waste your energy, you can't hit him now. Alan reached out and stopped Luffy, who was irritable and wanted to rush up again. Looking at the Sand Crocodile, who was slowly returning to its original state after being broken into yellow sand, he stopped and said, Huh, Alan. At this time, the stubborn Luffy saw Alan, who had been there for a long time. You idiot, don't rush up, don't you realize that your attack has no effect on that guy? He slowly took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it with Sanji's lighter. Alan said slowly after exhaling a breath of smoke. He really can't stand a rough-hearted idiot like Luffy, who hasn't noticed anything after playing for so long in vain. But who knows, after listening to Ellen's question, Luffy nodded decisively. Well, found it. Huh. Alan turned his head and glanced at Luffy beside him in surprise. Now that you have found out, why are you still attacking so desperately? Wasting energy. The protagonist's exclusive passive, can't play without residual blood, right? Alan thought it was difficult to express in his heart, but he didn't say it. He always felt that after saying this sentence, he would be called an idiot by some idiot. Ah, then, what are you going to do? After flicking the soot, Alan asked Luffy beside him. I don't know. Shoot him, Luffy shouted unexpectedly, with an imposing look on his face. But the meaning of the words made people couldn't help but hold their foreheads. You idiot. Forget it. Let me do it. Rubbing the bridge of his nose helplessly, Alan flicked off the cigarette butt in his hand. He took 2 steps forward, ignoring Luffy's yelling behind him. Facing the sand crocodile. Really, who said that at the beginning? I don't want to face a guy like Sand Crocodile, but now. Looking at Sand Crocodile with a slow and cold smile in front of him, Alan felt like he was crazy in his heart. Rant about himself. There is no way, time is also fate, and time is also fate. Repeating such a sentence in his heart, Alan looked at the Sand Crocodile in front of him and retracted all his thoughts. A familiar smile appeared on his face again. Footsteps kept moving. Observation hockey turned on, and Aaron approached the Sand Crocodile, carefully paying attention to the expression on his face. At the same time, he also observed the various flows of breath in his body. A bit of strangeness can't escape Alan's eyes. Alan didn't stop until he realized what Sand Crocodile might have to say. He took the lead and said, "You are really cruel, Master Sand Crocodile. When you were in the desert, you started doing it, and you didn't give me a chance to explain it." With a slight complaint in his mouth, Alan took a small step forward without showing any trace of his speech. If you don't pay attention, you won't notice it at all. At this time, the distance between the two is not too close, at least not enough to allow Aaron to abandon his rational impulse and act. If you can get a little closer, you will get a little closer, and if you are found, you will be found. The big deal is to do it with a knife and a gun. It's just a little shichibukai, and it's not for nothing that Alan has been roaming this sea for many years. Even if you can't beat it, that can kill the Sand Crocodile. It may be strange to say that, but a fight means that 2 people are facing each other head to head, using all means and tricks until the other person kneels and sings of conquest. But there are many ways to kill a person. ... Over there, Sand Crocodile didn't notice Alan's movements unexpectedly, and after pulling the corner of his mouth bluntly, he said in a low voice, "Second Division. Oh, for someone like you who is good at betrayal. Speaking of which, any sign is enough to make me take action." Lord Sand Crocodile, you are really joking. When it comes to betrayal, isn't that lady more worthy of your attention than me? This is what Alan wanted to say. The woman in the mouth was talking about Robin. Alan wanted to provoke the relationship between the two. But the words were hesitant. Fortunately, Alan didn't say it. Robin at this time is still valuable to Sand Crocodile. Read the historical text. If Alan said these words, he would have to give Alan a desert sword because of the situation. At that time, if Alan didn't make a move and just approached Crocodile on his own, no matter how well Alan hid it, his intentions would have to be seen. Then it will be troublesome. However, Alan didn't think of this. Due to intelligence and time constraints, Alan didn't know that Sand Crocodile wanted the records about Hades recorded in the historical text. Alan hesitated to say it, mainly because years of experience had told him. When thinking about this kind of 2-person thing, it's best not to involve a third person. After all, the matter between the 2 of them lasted for more than 10 days at most. But as long as a person is involved, the nature is different. I have studied the FA, and I know it takes 10 years to get on the bus, so I don't get on the bus. As the so-called old man, old slippery, it is precisely because of Alan's cautiousness that he avoided a trouble that could be saved for himself. Chapter 267 _Fierce Fight. The book returned to the main text, and Alan chewed the words to his mouth and then swallowed them back into his stomach. The expression on his face did not change, and after a quick turn of thoughts in his mind, he replaced it with a relatively mediocre answer. Lord Sand Crocodile, you are really joking, although I do have some not-so-glorious past, but is my image so unbearable in your heart? Alan raised his eyebrows, spread his hands, and took a small step forward with this action. Hee, second division, for a guy like you, some caution is still necessary. Sand Crocodile sneered twice, but his eyes narrowed. A cold murderous aura flowed out from his eyes. No emotional fluctuations at all. People can't help but sigh, it's really only the wrong name, not the wrong nickname. Crocodile at this time lived up to the name of the Sand Crocodile. A person who sees with only a pair of eyes becomes cold. Ha, Mr. Sand Crocodile, you really let people not know what to say. Alan raised his eyebrows, his face soft. The murderous aura revealed by the Sand Crocodile quietly disappeared in the palm of his hand. What a joke. Alan has seen a lot of wind and waves, and it is impossible to be fixed in place by someone's eyes. He waved his hand, said to be careful, you are the more dangerous person. The expression on his face changed, Alan said with emotion, and took a small step forward. I always believe that the degree of harm of a person does not lie in the height of his strength. Even if a person stands at the top of the world with unparalleled strength, but if he can't bear to kill even an ant, then his degree of harm can be called zero. On the contrary, if someone has such an ambitious idea like you, even if he is just an ordinary person, the degree of harm will be far higher than his own strength. Alan's expression remained the same, still soft and harmless. If you close your eyes and listen, you can't hear any killing intent at all. And the meaning revealed in Alan's words is very subtle and flattering the Sand Crocodile. Ordinary people have such a high level of harm with the ambition of a Sand Crocodile, not to mention the Sand Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai. The so-called flattery is not blindly belittling oneself to make others comfortable. Or even bluntly how. This kind of thing is actually very simple, just do what you want, just right. Saying a little bit more, but saying a little less is too obscure, and others can't hear it. Alan's remarks are just right. He didn't mention himself at all, but praised Sand Crocodile again. Calling Crocodile, the corners of Vivi's mouth rose. Even the coldness on his face dissipated a little. Also taking advantage of this opportunity, Alan quietly took a step forward. Second team. You are really. The misty smoke rose from the cigar at the corner of Sand Crocodile's mouth, blocking his sight. It's a pity. At this time, in Alan's observation hockey's perception, the Sand Crocodile's sight that was blocked by the smoke really had a meaning of regret. Crocodile was really tempted by Alan. Not that tempting. It's probably the kind of sigh that such a talented person can't use for me. Alan's expression remained unchanged, but he raised his eyebrows in his heart. It's a pity, but I can take advantage of it, I thought to myself. Thinking of this, Alan's mind was spinning rapidly, constantly thinking about what kind of attitude he should show. The good, the bad, the flattering, the arrogant. A few words quickly emerged. But after some careful scrutiny, he ate it into his stomach again. It's not very suitable, and now this situation really needs to be. Alan put away the distracting thoughts, and the expression on his face changed again. Hey, Alan sighed, and then said softly, it's really a pity. Oh, after hearing this, Sand Crocodile retracted his thoughts and looked at Alan, wondering what it meant. I said it's a pity because you cherish your talents. You're a pity for a chicken feather. It's a pity that if I could have met you, Lord Sand Crocodile, earlier, I believe we would get along very happily now, Alan explained when he saw Sand Crocodile's doubts. Whether in terms of ambition or strength, you are indeed in line with my appetite. A good bird chooses a tree to perch on, said Alan. Paused for a while, took a step forward, and then said, if the first person I met was you, I believe this will not be the case now. Quote. That's why I say it's a pity. After finishing the final conclusion, Alan took another step forward. At this time, it was just within 10 steps. If Alan is a little impulsive or anxious, he has a chance of success now. But this moment is not an imminent juncture. Although Alan took the initiative to include the sand crocodile in the scope of his attack, he still waited for a while with the mentality of being stable. Really, that's really a pity. After hearing the meaning of Alan's words, Sand Crocodile also sighed, as if lamenting a missed opportunity. Then looking at Alan, he said with a playful face, how about giving you another chance, 2nd Division? Kill the Straw Hat Luffy, and I will completely forget your betrayal of me. When it is done, your Bailey, the credit, I will remember it in my heart. Oh, then you were really magnanimous enough. Hearing that, Alan raised his eyebrows and said inexplicably, how, accept it or not? With a smile on the corner of his mouth, Sand Crocodile didn't want to delay any longer. Asked directly. But Alan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he spoke out of his own accord. You really love me, now the situation is completely dominant for you, and your plans and ambitions are close at hand. If nothing else happens, you will succeed in the end. And me, it's like a complete hitchhiker. Apart from getting rid of Luffy, I can get these without spending a cent of effort. No matter how I think about it, I'm shameless. But, Alan paused, looked back at Luffy behind him, and then turned to look directly into Sand Crocodile's eyes. It's the same sentence, sorry. Sand Crocodile Lord. Quote. When these words came out, the most surprised was not the Sand Crocodile. It was Robin standing aside. The almond-shaped pupils looked at Alan with a little unreasonableness. What kind of magic power does this Straw Hat Pirates have to make this man refuse Crocodile's solicitation twice? Chapter 268 _ vs. Sand Crocodile. Quote. After hearing Alan's words, Sand Crocodile was silent for a moment, and then asked, rejection. Can you give me a reason? 2nd Division. Reason. Alan looked back at the yellow sand in the sky outside the fence. Actually, there is no reason. But if I insist on saying it, it may be because of childhood dreams. This sentence Alan really sighed from the bottom of his heart. Alan was a big boss in his last life, but the anime One Piece, King of Pirates, can be said to have accompanied Alan's childhood. Moved by the characters and moved by their stories. First came into contact with One Piece, King of Pirates as a child, the teenager could not imagine going on an adventure to the sea with him. Go through what they have gone through and make up for those regrets that were once irreparable. Who wouldn't have thought of stepping on the Going Merry of the Straw Hat Pirates and joining them? Although this ship has an idiot captain, a lunatic swordsman, and an idiot cook, it seems very unreliable. But every teenager knows in their hearts that they are the most reliable fortress in times of partner crisis. When Sabayati landed, the captain wept bitterly for the disappearance of his partner. A swordsman who carried the wounds of his comrades alone when he was Moria. On Cake Island, a cook who endures alone to protect his loved ones. Everyone, the story behind everyone, is so touching. Board the Straw Hat Pirates, listen to the slapsticks of the companions in the ear, complete their work, and face the powerful enemy together. Laughter, banquets, freedom, and unchanging friendship flowed in my heart. Alan once fantasized, prayed, and realized. When he came to this world, he shouted and went to sea, pulled his family, robbed a pirate ship, and ate a devil fruit. He thought he could have a wonderful adventure like Luffy. After all, this is time travel. Aren't all the transmigrators protagonists? Change what you want to change, and remove what you don't want to see. Live freely, live freely. Alan believed this, and he didn't think anything could stump him. Men are going to sea. Nothing can stop a man's adventurous heart, he said at that time. But reality gave him a slap in the face. Acting recklessly eventually provokes an enemy that Eren can't deal with at that time. Taking away his relatives, he also took away his heart full of adventures and no scruples. Alan is dead, on that day. After so many years of ups and downs, I have killed people, seen the sea, slaughtered villages, and held banquets in person. All these tragic or pleasant experiences made Alan grow his own experience, and at the same time, some of them could not help but dissolve in the world. Pirates. Oh, but that's all. Alan sneered at the so-called pirates in his heart, and he had seen more and more real pirates. He had thought that was it. Alan, who was willing to give his life for the risk, died just like that. Even when I saw Luffy's bounty order, I had no other thoughts in my heart other than sighing that I was in the world of One Piece, King of Pirates. But, engraving directly branded in the depths of the bone marrow by a tattooist who was too fierce. When Alan set foot on the Going Merry and ate the plate of seafood fried rice made by Sanji, everything seemed to be destined. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it, but the seed of yearning for the Straw Hat Pirates from the previous generation in my heart has gradually sprouted like a long drought. Sanji's cooking with his own hands. Aurora-like experience for every sea fan. Alan is no exception. Even if I didn't admit it at the beginning, I didn't even think in that direction in my heart. But the gears of fate were already twisted together after Alan's raft was knocked over by the Straw Hat gang and slowly turned. Step by step, Alan was drawn to the status of an official crew member. From the plan that was blurted out without thinking at the beginning, to the careful planning, to the end of the performance in person, to the direct confrontation with the cadres, and finally to the sand crocodile directly. Alan is like a little bug that fell into the trap of a big spider. He struggled step by step but fell deeper and deeper, and was finally eaten by the spider and turned into a part of the cobweb. Hey, Alan had thousands of thoughts in his mind, but in reality it was only a short moment. Sand Crocodile naturally didn't know what Alan meant or what his childhood dreams were. Those who have seen it can understand. But Sand Crocodile didn't care too much. After hearing Alan's answer, he exhaled a breath of smoke. That means there is no talk. Alan took a step forward and slightly lowered his forehead. I am sorry, the Sand Crocodile is big. Desert treasure knife. It should be said that the crocodile is still a crocodile. Before Alan's words were finished, he had already started directly. So despicable, shouted Luffy next to him. Yellow sand emerged out of thin air, condensing into a crescent moon sword. With the big wave of the sand crocodile, the desert sword went straight to Alan and chopped it. In fact, according to the distance between the two, the sand crocodile directly elementalized and approached Alan to give a hook, but for some reason, he chose to use a long-range attack. This gave Alan a chance. Alan's observation haki had noticed the flow of breath in the sand crocodile as early as when the sand crocodile said nothing. Already prepared. Seeing the desert treasure rushing towards him, Alan was not in a hurry. Dodging and dodging like an eagle, he avoided the desert treasure sword. Then he used his strength to bully his body forward, and quickly rushed towards the sand crocodile. Robin, who was watching, was secretly vigilant. Alan's speed towards the sand crocodile was not slow just now. If her opponent was replaced by her, she might have fallen behind at this moment. And when did he get so close to the sand crocodile? The alarm bell rang in Robin's heart. And over there, the distance between the two was not far due to Alan's efforts. At this time, Alan was even more prepared. After dodging the desert treasure sword, it took 3 or 2 steps to get close to the sand crocodile. Observation haki expected the enemy to take the lead, and evaded the golden hook in the sand crocodile's hand, followed by the reverse cassock slash. Divide the sand crocodile into 2 halves from the bottom up. The swiftness of the speed and the decisiveness of the action made people sigh in their hearts. Painless for the sand crocodile. Alan didn't master armament haki, and the sea stone in his arm didn't come out. This offensive looks very handsome, but in fact it is useless. The sand crocodile that was cut into 2 pieces by Alan quickly became elementalized, turned into a piece of yellow sand and galloped backwards. At the same time, a question arose in his mind: how did this guy see through my actions? Chapter 269-Brawl. Can't help but wonder in the heart of the sand crocodile. Although the sand crocodile with the desert treasure knife just now admitted that it was not very glorious, it can be said with confidence that it was sudden enough. And the distance between the two is so close, coupled with the operation of calling first and then calling. Even a cautious person like Alan couldn't escape so safely. And also gave him a knife. The feeling of being preempted step by step, and all actions can't escape the eyes of the other party, made Sand Crocodile a little familiar. This is observation hockey. The Sand Crocodile turned into an elemental body and quickly moved back, pulling away from Alan. Although there are some doubts in the words in the mouth, there is an inexplicable affirmation in the tone. There was a little surprise in Alan's eyes. Observation hockey is what? It's really embarrassing for King Cobra, who is now hung on the wall with nails, but he doesn't forget to cheer. Robin on the side gave an explanation after hearing that. The so-called observation hockey is a kind of Barbara. It is difficult for ordinary people to grasp. Has heard of hockey even if he never had the chance to learn it. Haven't eaten pork and never seen a pig run. Also taking advantage of the fact that nothing happened, Robin explained to Cobra. However, the explanation was very brief, and she didn't know much about the conditions and intelligence. But in a few simple sentences, Cobra probably understood what it meant. Is it difficult for ordinary people to grasp? Cobra, who was nailed to the wall, pondered for a while, not knowing what he was thinking. And over there, looking at Alan who didn't continue to shoot after one blow, Sand Crocodile spat out the cigar in his mouth. What are you hesitating? Second division, he asked. Hesitating. Robin on the side chewed on the meaning of those words. What is hesitation? Alan was indeed hesitant. He was hesitating whether to make a dead hand or not, and whether or not to shoot the sea-stone dagger in his left arm. Just now, Alan had a chance to stab the dagger into the sand crocodile's chest. But the fact was right in front of him, and Alan let go of this opportunity. Although others may not think of this, the sand crocodile who is being attacked can feel it. Hockey has not mastered it after being at sea for so long, but although sea stone is rare, it has a way and has a stable production. If you were someone else, Sand Crocodile might be able to laugh at the other side. But for Alan, sea stone may be a little off, but even observation hockey has mastered it, and there's no reason armament can't learn it. The so-called hockey, jumping out of this world and speaking briefly, it is not just a mental scan, a mental coverage, and a mental shock. When the human body reaches a certain state, it will naturally appreciate it. There is no set of different races that species can't learn. At most, there is a highland that satisfies the conditions. And Ellen can even observation hockey, there is no reason not to armament. Three-color hockey, except that the conditions required by Conqueror hockey are somewhat harsh, the other two are interoperable. After learning the first one, the second one can also be quickly understood. Transform the potential power, breath, momentum, and deterrence in the human body into a substantive armor. The thing at the door. This is why the sand crocodile has such doubts. At such a close distance just now, Alan could make him a little embarrassed at any time. Why didn't he take action? It's not your style to be merciful to the enemy, the second team. Sand Crocodile looked at Alan with a playful look on his face. Really? He pulled a sword flower and retracted the ordinary long sword in his hand to his waist. Alan looked at the Sand Crocodile's eyes and slowly pulled out the top shark tooth of the three knives. As soon as the sword came out of its sheath, Sand Crocodile couldn't help but narrow its eyes. The snow-white blade in the first half is nothing, mainly in the upper row in the second half until the fine inverse teeth of the blade catch his eyes. The meaning of such a change of knives on the spot is by no means different. I am afraid it's not mixed with something, Sand Crocodile secretly said in his heart. This is a shark tooth of one of the 50 workers of the good and fast knife. Is it actually in your hands? Robin is not a famous sword madman like Tashigi. He can tell the origin, history, and even the lines on the surface of a knife by relying on the lines on the handle. Clearly understand the truth. Although Robin doesn't know much about knives, he still remembers this kind of treasure knife with his own name. Robin, who loves to read, still remembers it in his spare time. Liang Kui Dao 50 workers come and go. Shark Teeth is an old guy, just like Alan. Alan had been around long before he got the knife. There was a shark tooth in the book Robin read a few years ago. At this time, he also showed the depth of his knowledge. And hear this. Alan glanced at Robin on the side. I actually recognize it. It seems that I underestimated you. The tone was flat, even with praise, but the meaning of the words was angry. Robin raised his eyebrows. What is this nonsense? I still need you to take a high look. Putting both hands on his chest, he was going to give Alan a 3-wheeled flower, and give Alan a good massage. But just as Robin was about to make a move, the sand crocodile over there stopped it. Okay, all Sunday, don't be impulsive, time is running out, now the business is important, go and ask the king where I want what I want. Sand crocodile reached out to stop Robin's movements, looked up at the sky, said. Understood. Slowly putting down his hands, Robin slammed the nails on Cobra's body with a cold look on his face. Reactivating his ability to grab the king's fragile neck, Robin's heart was moved by Alan's emotions, and Robin said coldly, do you know where the historical text is recorded? You look at that thing, do. What? Cobra, who was a little uneasy with his breath, asked when his neck was strangled. Quote. Robin didn't reply. His eyes sank and he activated his ability to open up a few flowers at the joints of Cobra's arm. Then he exerted force on his hand, only to hear a few crisp sounds. Cobra's arm was almost twisted into a twist by Robin. Stop talking nonsense. You just need to take me there. The tigress didn't look at Robin's full smile. Did she really think this man was a good man? Where did the white lotus come from in the big dye vat? On the other hand, King Cobra was also stubborn, and his arm was violently disjointed, and apart from a few muffled groans, there was no scream at all. From this point of view, the king deserves admiration. After all, not everyone is as numb to pain as Alan. Chapter 270 then hit. Looking at the king who was slowly moving away from Robin's capture, Alan was alert to the sand crocodile in front of him and said to Luffy behind him, Hey, Luffy, follow him to have a look. That king is Vivi's father, don't let him die. Father. Luffy scratched his head, puzzled. Sigh. Vivi is the princess, that's the king, hurry up and follow. Glancing at Robin's back who disappeared around the corner, Alan sighed and urged. Okay, I get it, Luffy is just that, and most of the time, he's very obedient. Although he didn't quite understand what Alan meant, he still nodded and set off to catch up. However, Crocodile is not deaf, and the voice of the conversation between the two is not small, so naturally there is no response. Throwing a desert sword in the direction of Luffy going. Sand Crocodile raised his hands and gently rubbed the golden hook in his hands, looking at the two people in front of him and said slowly, Second Division, do you think I will let you get your wish? Chi. With legs extended, Luffy was forced back to his original position while avoiding the sand crocodile's attack with 2 consecutive backflips. It's really troublesome. Returning to his original position, Luffy looked at Alan. Lord Sand Crocodile, your opponent is me. Alan put the shark tooth in the sheath, slightly bent his right hand, and locked his eyes firmly on Sand Crocodile's body. At the same time, he said to Luffy next to him, Luffy, after a while you just dash forward and I'll stop the Sand Crocodile. Really? Full of confidence, the second division. Sand Crocodile narrowed his eyes. Hee, I don't need to be too vigilant against you, Alan said with provocation. Strategically despise the enemy, tactically value the enemy. Alan now wants to delay the Sand Crocodile, and if he is a little arrogant, if Crocodile can focus on Alan, then Alan really earns it. Yeah, Luffy nodded silently, watching the movement of the two of them rushing towards the direction where Robin and the two left. Looking for death. The sand crocodile's expression sank, the yellow sand fluttered, and the elementalization of the lower body flew in the direction of Luffy. Golden hook in his hand was faintly gleaming, and he aimed at Luffy's eye socket and was about to kill him. But how could Alan, who was already prepared at this time, make Sand Crocodile get his wish? Observation Haki noticed the aura that accumulated in his body before the word Sand Crocodile's death was spoken. Crocodile sounded. Alan had already taken the lead in reaching the halfway point of the Sand Crocodile's attack. The shark tooth in his hand blocked the golden hook of the Sand Crocodile. Kang. I said, your opponent is me. Alan used his hands to compete with the Sand Crocodile, looking at Crocodile's close face and said. The two eyes crossed each other with murderous intent. Second Division. Looking into Alan's eyes, Sand Crocodile said softly with killing intent. Hee, thanks a lot, Alan. Seeing that the Sand Crocodile's attack was blocked by Alan, Luffy thanked Alan contentedly while chasing in the direction of Robin. But how could Sand Crocodile get Luffy's wish? Stop, smug kid. Desert Sparta. I saw Sand Crocodile's free right hand raised upwards. The yellow sand appeared out of thin air again and condensed into the shape of a crescent moon sword. Luffy, who was galloping along the ground. A ravine was drawn on the marble floor dedicated to the royal family. Although the name of the Sand Crocodile is different, in terms of appearance, this move is no different from the Desert Sword. Don't be delusional, Lord Sand Crocodile. Your opponent is me. Alan used his hands hard and quickly retreated with Sand Crocodile's golden hook, blocking Luffy again, in front of Desert Sparta. The body is slightly bent, the right hand is vacantly grasped, and he wants to slash it away with a drawn sword. Being fooled. Second Division. A smile appeared on Sand Crocodile's face when he saw Alan's actions. Reaching out a hand, through the traction of the mind, I saw that the crescent moon sword, which was originally aimed directly at Alan, suddenly changed its route when it arrived in front of Alan. Bypassing Aaron, who was standing in front of him, he went straight to Luffy and chopped. What? Luffy looked back and exclaimed when he heard the wind rushing towards him behind him, but it was too late to dodge. Originally watching Alan standing in front of him, Luffy didn't pay attention because of his trust in his partner. But who knew that the Sand Crocodile's attack still took a turn, skipping Alan and hitting himself. The flexibility of this move is really surprising. In Luffy's mind, he was more than ready to slash. If this knife hits hard, Luffy can't die, but he probably won't have the strength to track Robin later. In this way, the purpose of Crocodile has been achieved. But Alan's potential may not be as high as the members of the Straw Hat Pirates. After all, there is still Seastone in his body. Seastone in his left arm doesn't go for a day. Alan's potential will stop there. But potential is potential and strength is strength. Although Alan's potential is low, his current strength is definitely stronger than anyone in the Straw Hat Pirates in one-on-one terms. Not even a Sand Crocodile can't be killed. And now, Alan is experienced, calm and unfeeling. Now that Observation Haki is in his hands, it is even more powerful. Observation Haki had already noticed it when Sand Crocodile pulled the crescent sword. Crocodile's Desert Sparta had just changed a little, and Alan started to exert his strength. Front of Luffy again. The smile on Sand Crocodile's face froze, and it slowly became gloomy. At this time, although the Sand Crocodile can change its moves a little more, making it turn a corner, but it is no longer necessary, the distance between the two is too close. He could only watch helplessly as Alan chopped it apart. Let Luffy run away. Thank you, Alan. Before leaving, Luffy didn't forget to give Sand Crocodile another knife. Quickly dashed across the corner and chased in the direction Robin left. Second Division. Sand Crocodile's face was so gloomy at this time that it seemed that water could drip. Seeing Alan obstructing himself over and over again, murderous intention surged in his heart. Just now, it really is Observation Haki. He turned the golden hook on his hand without showing any trace, and Sand Crocodile said, "Just kidding, the three-color hockey can't be learned by people like this. I just guessed it through the analysis of the character of Sand Crocodile." Alan chuckled lightly, with sloppy eyes in his mouth. Alan is still happy to do something like this, which can make his opponent uncertain by saying a word. After all, it's just a word. Not much energy was wasted, not much time wasted. Chapter 271 Nicole Robin. Oh, it's ridiculous. It seems that I think highly of your second team. You don't even have the confidence to admit your own strength. Hearing Alan's words, Shah Crocodile was contemptuous and his face was full of ridicule. For Zoro or Luffy, such words may have a little effect, but for Alan, such words without the slightest meaning have no value even for him to think about the meaning. Directly in the left ear into the right ear out. He didn't take it to heart at all, he opened his mouth and smiled back. I am not that kind of person. If there is something in the words, if you just listen from the surface, Alan is very honest, saying that he is not the kind of person who has the strength to hide. Then there is Alan who said that Sand Crocodile should not waste his energy. He is not the kind of person who will expose all his cards with one sarcastic remark. Really? Sand Crocodile looked at Alan and said in a deep voice. Observation hockey along the breeze. Then it changed from less to more, from the wind driving the sand to the sand carrying the wind. The person who shaves straightly hurts in the cheek, obscuring his vision. For a time, it was impossible to see the surrounding buildings in this small square. Only the yellow sand that fills the sky is in sight. Want to block your sight? Crocodile. There was too much sand, and the eyes had lost their function at this time. Alan simply closed his eyes. On the one hand, it can protect the eyes, and on the other hand, it can also focus all of its attention on the observation hockey, which is used to perceive the existence of the Sand Crocodile. The body was lowered to a limit, and the right hand that never let go rested on the shark tooth around the waist. Cut with a knife. I heard that the lower the body pressure, the higher the damage. If you can dig a hole and bury yourself, you might be able to cut through the world. Manual dog head. Looking at the glowing spirit body that stopped moving after casting a large area blocking move in observation hockey. Alan was a little puzzled. What is the Sand Crocodile doing? Why hasn't it shot yet? It was too late to say it, and just when Alan had doubts in his heart, he heard the sound of a sand crocodile suddenly coming from the yellow sand. Desert King Kong sword. In Alan's observation hockey, with the sound of the sand crocodile, the four crescent-shaped swords made of sand went straight to Alan and chopped it. Along the way, he cut golden iron, and plowed out 4 ditches on the hard marble ground and went straight to Alan. The momentum is huge, but it is hidden in the whistling wind. See, don't smell. At this time, if someone else is here, and the strength is a little weaker, it is estimated that they will die here. But Alan was indeed present at this time. Invisible, like being blind with a weapon like observation hockey in your hand. A tentative attack. Looking at the desert diamond sword that was directly attacking him, Alan was secretly suspicious. Although such an attack is powerful and fast, and it is also hidden in the yellow sand in the sky, it seems that it can make people suffer. But not all sand crocodiles already knew about Alan's observation hockey. What else could such an attack do besides being a little louder? However, although Alan had such doubts in his heart, the attack was already close at hand. If he was hit by such an obvious move because he was thinking about something, then Alan would really become a joke. Putting down his doubts for the time being, Alan found the right time. Aiming at the gap between the 4 yellow sand swords, a lazy donkey rolled around and avoided the attack. Lazy donkey roll. Martial arts magic. There is also a trick iron bridge comparable to it. Although a little unseemly. But in the battle, where did the scruples come from being decent or not? Although Alan is a decent person, in order to save physical strength, and the posture of Alan just now is a little unique. A bit close to the ground. Alan also figured out a convenience and rolled over. The sharp sword made of yellow sand passed Alan with the sharpness that could cut through the extremely thick rock wall, directly into the building behind him. There was not even a single bit of obstruction, like a hot knife cutting butter, dividing the palace gate, which showed the majesty of the royal family, into 4 sections. It's over. Aaron, who evaded the sand crocodile skill with a lazy donkey roll, regained his high-damage slashing stance. Watching the sand crocodile, who had no response after a single blow in the yellow sand, had deeper doubts in his heart. What does this mean? Alan couldn't help but wonder. Alan always felt that sand crocodile's actions were far from over. Whether it was the experience he had gained in life and death for a long time, or his natural intuition, the uneasy emotions in his heart were reminding Alan. Some details were ignored by him. What is it? While Alan maintained his posture, Observation Hockey carefully paid attention to all the dynamics around him, and began to recall after he met Sand Crocodile in his mind. All the movements, expressions, tone of voice of the Sand Crocodile, as well as the surrounding environment, the purpose of the Sand Crocodile, the purpose of its own side. From small to large, it can be said that the various considerations are relatively comprehensive. But after some recollections, Alan just didn't find anything wrong. The urgency of the situation, the uneasiness in his heart, and the unbearable pain for ordinary people without the numbness of alcohol in his body made Alan feel irritable. Damn, Alan frowned, feeling more and more impatient. Calm down, don't be affected by your own emotions. With a long sigh, Alan forced himself to suppress all the emotions in his heart. In addition to feeling the observation hockey of the outside world, the brain is completely empty. Ease your emotions. There is a child living in everyone's heart, and the more anxious you are, the more he will make trouble with you. At this time, please calm down. Let the child settle down first. After Alan swallowed several times in a row, he inhaled some fine sand into his throat. It felt a lot calmer. Observation Hockey opened to the maximum, carefully swept over him repeatedly, and began to think again in his mind. This time, I don't think about the expression of Sand Crocodile. Instead, he began to think differently. If Alan himself was placed in the position of the Sand Crocodile, what can he do to get rid of his own enemy who has observation hockey and can't escape the enemy's eyes with any attack? This time it was more open-minded. Forget the impractical, the toolless. And what the Sand Crocodile didn't learn. Alan finally got his own answer, and suddenly exclaimed, "Not good." In his heart. Chapter 272 _ the title of the last chapter is Lying to You. There is no role for Robin at all. Without further ado, the book continues above. Not good. Alan had a high probability of guessing the means that Sand Crocodile might use. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Facing an opponent like himself, what else can Sand Crocodile do? Of course. Goo-ha-ha-ha, have you guessed it? The second division. But unfortunately, it's too late now. Just when Alan was just about to take action, he heard sand coming out of the yellow sand in the sky. The unique laughter of the crocodile. And that conspiracy successful tone. Is it too late? Feeling the gradually slowly draining physical strength of his body, as well as his somewhat drowsy head, Alan withdrew his posture and knelt on the ground with one hand on the ground, while the other hand covered his pounding heartbeat. Without giving up, I pondered the remedy. And over there, looking at Alan who had already been tricked, the Sand Crocodile smiled and stopped the yellow sand blowing. The small sandstorm that was whistling in the courtyard stopped instantly. This natural disaster, which is enough to affect human life, is as docile as a harmless big cat in the hands of the Sand Crocodile. Stop when you say it, start when you start. Seen how amazing Crocodile's control over his own rustling fruit ability is. It's all over. The second team. Looking at Aaron who was kneeling on the ground, Sand Crocodile walked up to him with a sneer on his face. Crocodile. Alan raised his eyes and looked at Sand Crocodile, with deep killing intent in his eyes. This guy really doesn't want a face as one of the King Shichibukai. Ha ha ha, it's rare to see such an expression on your face. Looking at the strong killing intent in Aaron's eyes, Sand Crocodile saw through his thoughts. Don't look at me like that, even with poison. A manifestation of strength. How? The second division. Mix the deadly scorpion venom into the sand and enter your body with your breath. Even observation hockey won't notice this move. With a raging smile on his face, Sand Crocodile slowly explained the reason why Alan became what he is now. All the actions of the Sand Crocodile just now were feints, whether it was the yellow sand that filled the sky or the mighty diamond sword. What really made Alan look like this was the dozens of inconspicuous grains of sand soaked in scorpion venom. Ha ha, your methods are really smart. Hearing Shah Crocodile's words, Alan was a little weak on his knees on the ground, but he still said sarcastically, "Thank you for your compliments. The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. In the battle, in order to be able to solve the enemy, even in despicable means is reasonable. It's just that I didn't expect that such naive words would come out of your mouth in the second division." He took out a high-end cigar from his arms. Sand Crocodile lit it, and spit out a mouthful of beauty. People are in good spirits on happy occasions, and it is a happy thing to be able to solve enemies like Alan, even for Sand Crocodile. Naive. I am indeed a little naive. No matter how much I think about it, I can't imagine that a king like you, Shichibukai, would actually use poison. Looking at the Sand Crocodile 3 steps away, Alan somehow. Under such circumstances, he continued to hold on to the Sand Crocodile with poison to knock him down. Outraged. Unhappy. Enough, the second team, your innocent appearance is really disgusting. Don't continue to destroy the good impression you left in my heart. Again and again, and said a few words of hatred, that's it. It's just annoying to be entangled in this endless entanglement. Sand Crocodile exhaled a breath of smoke, unhappy. No matter what you say, it's you who's down now, and it's me who's standing. It's me who wins, the second team. Win. It's ridiculous. What is your goal? Plan this country. Even if you get rid of me and the idiot who just passed by today, you can successfully take this country in your hands, but don't forget Vivi, he's not dead yet. Hearing Sand Crocodile's words, Alan couldn't help but sarcastically said, at the same time the hand that was covering his chest came to his waist at some point. As the blood of the royal family, the leader of the rebel army outside and Vivi are still old friends from childhood. When Vivi finds out that you have won a temporary victory, he will naturally hide and become the leader of the rebel army, plus the royal blood. The identity can also lead to the mutiny of part of the king's army. When the country you want, she will not let you settle down. Can't I give you a little trouble without hurting the masses? And what you want to do against that white-haired marine in the rainy field? Even if the marine side will attack you because of the bad relationship, it is not suitable for the king of a country to continue to be Shichibukai. Even if you don't come forward by yourself and want to support a puppet to come to power, don't forget that we pirates may be born at odds with the white-haired marine, but Vivi, as the blood of the royal family, has a natural reason to support Marine. Myself. With Vivi messing up inside and Marine outside, can you, a crocodile hiding under the water, still be able to realize your plan while sitting safely in your own seat? I'm afraid it's too early to say I won, Crocodile. After listening to Alan's words, Sand Crocodile couldn't help but narrowed his eyes. The slightest chill came out of it. But then Sand Crocodile showed a smile, with a little sigh in his mouth. I should say that it's really your second team. Although it's too late, I still want to say something. It's a pity. Actually found out exactly what was bothering me in my heart. I should have put more effort into you. Seeing Alan kneeling on one knee with a painful expression, Sand Crocodile seemed to be moved. Yeah, it's really a pity. Feeling his weakened body, Alan knew in his heart that it wasn't time to delay. Clarified the topic directly. Then what are you going to do now? Kill me. I can tell you bluntly first, if you don't make up for me, I will drag this body to find Vivi and tell these things. Her. Suicide, the meaning revealed in this sentence is not in line with Alan's style. Quote. After hearing Alan's words, Sand Crocodile was silent for a moment. Finally, with a puff of smoke, Sand Crocodile watched Aaron, who was half kneeling on the ground, take a step forward. "Give you one more chance, the second team. If you choose to join me, I can forget what happened before you," Sand Crocodile said slowly. Crocodile did have a recruiting mind. But it's really a pity. Chapter 273-end. It's really a pity. Hearing the words of Sand Crocodile recruiting again, even though Alan had already made his own decision, he still had to sigh in his heart. If the first person I met was really Sand Crocodile, I believe we could get along very well. Looking at Sand Crocodile taking a step forward, Alan finally sighed and put it away. These unrealistic ideas. Now is not the time to think about these things. The Sand Crocodile has already entered Alan's attack range. No one could have imagined that Alan would hide so many things in himself. He is also included. Just when Sand Crocodile raised a little expectation and waited for Alan's answer. Suddenly, Alan, who was kneeling on one knee below, suddenly stretched out his hand and swung it. The dominant sense of stability hidden inside the waist of the trench coat came out. Following Alan's strength, he threw it onto Sand Crocodile, and surrounded Crocodile's upper body. A thick purple smoke instantly filled Sand Crocodile's sight. What? A sound of astonishment sounded. Sand Crocodile didn't expect Alan to have this hand. Or it was out of confidence in the scorpion venom in the golden hook of his arm. Crocodile never thought that Alan still had the ability to resist at this time. "I wanted to dodge but it was too late. I can only panic and elementalize to avoid these gases that I don't know what they are, but at first glance, I know that they are not easy to mess with. But still a step too late." Sand Crocodile has a very high self-esteem for his own strength, and now there is a happy event that will soon be realized after years of forbearance. Seeing Alan falling to the ground, he let go of his vigilance. In addition, Alan's action was sudden. When the Sand Crocodile wants to hold its breath and elementalize it, some of the gas has entered the body along the breath. With his way, he also gave his body. Alan also acted as a unique trick for the old gentleman to compare his characters today. Once you get the way of the Sand Crocodile, let the Sand Crocodile be attacked in the same way. And Alan's action just now was far beyond Sand Crocodile's expectations. Whether it was this sudden attack or the poison on his waist, it was not something that ordinary people could think of. "I just hate that no one else is present at this time, otherwise it will definitely set off a burst of consternation." But what surprised Sand Crocodile even more was how Alan could still have the strength, or in other words, how could he endure the various discomforts caused by his body after being poisoned. His family knew his own affairs, and the Sand Crocodile knew that the scorpion venom in the golden hook of his arm was enough to kill people on the spot. Although Alan was not directly hit by the scorpion venom, he entered the body along the sand. The loss of blood contact resulted in some discounts in efficacy, but even that was enough with Alan. "It's impossible to pretend that look just now. Why do you still have the strength to do this?" With such doubts in mind, Sand Crocodile's elementalized body wanted to quickly dodge backwards. But it's still too late. Although the poison that Alan has painstakingly developed over the years is not a deadly thing. But at this juncture, it can still be done to paralyze the mind of Sand Crocodile. The Sand Crocodile pushed his body to step back. But the cerebral nerves blocked by the sense of stability were one step slower. Sand Crocodile shouted frantically and urgently outside, "Run, run, run." The brain responded slowly, "What tilde tilde? Ah tilde I'm going to run tilde tilde." The end is anxious to death the individual. And that is such a delay. The Sand Crocodile only felt a pain in his waist, and his body was forced to break away from the elementalization. Then a wave of powerlessness like a tide swept out the strength of his whole body. He fell straight to the ground. "This is..." Sand Crocodile looked down along the line of sight, and saw a long and narrow knife suddenly appearing from Alan's left arm. The bladed part sank directly into his waist. As for why the sand crocodile knows that it is a long and narrow knife, it is mainly based on feeling. Belly feeling. Sea stone. The second team, you. Sand crocodile is not a hairy boy who just went to sea. He has never even seen sea stone's power. He feels the familiar feeling of powerlessness in himself. It can be described as shocked and angry. Shocked by anger flying together, admiration and intractability coexist. Having installed a sea stone dagger directly in his body, this kind of tolerance for pain and the ruthlessness that will do anything to achieve his goals are not comparable to normal people. Sand crocodile has both anger at Alan's repeated rejection of him, and admiration for meeting such an enemy as an opponent. I am sorry, Mr. Sand Crocodile, I'm down. It seems that I have failed you again. Looking at the sand crocodile under him, Alan used the weight of his body to fix it so that it wouldn't fall off the short knife. Feeling some vague perceptions on his body, Alan said with a wry smile. When Alan was doing small movements on his waist just now, he didn't just pull out a visual sense of stability. Aaron also secretly opened a bottle of those invisible security senses, which are colorless and odorless as soon as they touch the air. Not for the sand crocodile, but for myself. There is only one chance, and Alan doesn't want to waste this last precious opportunity like this. Opening a bottle of anxiety can also ease the clearer pain sensation on his body and the discomfort after being poisoned. Avoid shaking hands when you can't handle it. Have you let me down? Second Division, you really let me down. The powerlessness brought by sea stone in his body made Sand Crocodile not even have the strength to hold a cigar. At this time, he could only reluctantly say something to delay the time. Sand Crocodile needs time to calm down now and wants a way out. The universe is uncertain. You and I are dark horses. Live like ants. Dang Lee. Cough. Come on. Even if the sand crocodile didn't use the sea stone knife to restrain the action at this moment, it seemed that there was no chance to continue. But for people like them, as long as they haven't gotten a satisfactory situation, unless they die, they will always try to find a chance to turn around. Now is not the time to give up. Now, saying anything is useless. The ending has been decided. You are the one who lost. Sand Crocodile Sama, shaking his somewhat blurred vision, Ailoon raised his spirits and followed Sand Crocodile with the last words. Alan's state is indeed not good. Whether it's the sand crocodile with deadly scorpion venom entering its body through its breath, or the sense of stability that Alan has prepared himself, all made Alan one step closer to death. Well, a sense of security is what makes Alan feel good. Chapter 274 _ The title of the last chapter is also lying to you. There are 2 or 3 chapters left. Seeing the blurry scene in front of him, Alan wanted to give himself a slap to refresh himself. After all, the sand crocodile is not dead yet. No matter what, it has to be delayed until the arrival of support. But thanks to the powerful and effective medicinal effect of his anxiety sense, Alan struggled to even say a word, and the sea stone knife was fixed entirely by his own body weight. Where did those excess physical strength come from to slap himself? I could only bite the tip of my tongue hard, hoping to use the pain to wake myself up a bit. But Alan had forgotten that, not to mention his nerves that were already numb to pain, the effect of tranquility was still in the body. This move came out to almost bite off his own tongue, but it didn't have the slightest effect. When Alan vaguely heard and felt that his tongue-biting tiger teeth were colliding up and down, he decisively stopped this meaningless behavior. It can be regarded as avoiding the result of excessive blood loss after the tongue is bitten. But Alan's move caught the sand crocodile's eyes. Looking at the movements of Alan's lips and the hemoglobin flowing down the corner of his mouth, Sand Crocodile didn't know what purpose he had, and said sarcastically, "I've been captured by you now, sea stone is still in my body. What are you worried about now?" But having said that, when Sand Crocodile saw Alan's refreshing action clearly, his admiration and vigilance rose a bit. "In order to prevent me from getting out in a way that I don't know, I would use this method to make myself more awake. This guy is really cruel to himself." "Ha! Sha, Sand Crocodile, You are really joking. For an enemy like you, no matter how vigilant you are, you should. The drowsy Alan still raised a bit of strength to answer Sand Crocodile's question at this moment. Gossip. And listening to Alan's forbearance tone, Sand Crocodile looked at Alan with a little pity that was just right for Alan to see. Why do you think you are doing this? Second Division. Although I don't know how long you've been with the Straw Hats, it's less than a month for sure. Is it really worth risking your life for a so-called partner who you have known for less than a month? You have been poisoned by my scorpion venom. Now if you can find a doctor for treatment, you may still have a chance to survive. I am one of the Shichibukai kings. Even if I fail, as a marine and a pirate, the worst outcome for me would be to be imprisoned in an underwater prison. But what about you? Sand Crocodile's voice became lower and lower. Slowly brought a little delusional meaning. Then whispered in Alan's ear, if you want to keep delaying me here, I won't necessarily die, but your tombstone will definitely be erected. When a person dies, everything really ends. You must still have unfinished business, your ambition, your obsession with hiding seastone in your body. Think about these things, and think about your desire to continue living in this world. You really gave up so willingly. For a friend who has known less than a month. For a naive princess. People like you shouldn't end up like this. What Sand Crocodile said seems to have penetrated Alan's heart quite accurately. What is Alan continuing to live on in this world for what? He wants to go to Hades' Dragon Palace to fulfill the oath he made to that fishman friend. Alan joined the Straw Hat Gang to help Vivi against the Sand Crocodile at the very beginning, but it was just for Bailey. A penny stumped the hero, and with Bailey, let alone the underwater Dragon Palace. Even Alan from the Marine headquarters went there. But if you think about it carefully, in fact, what Sand Crocodile said is the same as not saying it. What do you mean by unfinished business? As long as people are still alive, they must have their own meaning. It's okay to be afraid of pain, for the sake of parents, for the sake of others, or if you don't want to trouble others. Even if it is just one who lives to live. It's all one reason to keep breathing in the world. Those who have lost their meaning and lost their purpose have deserted us. Those who are still alive now always have their own meaning or purpose. Plus the current situation. As the saying goes, people are good at their words when they are about to die. When they are on the verge of death, people always like to think towards a beautiful place. And Sand Crocodile says unfinished business. Who doesn't have a to-do list of their own yet? Even if Sand Crocodile's remarks were replaced by another person, he probably still has unfinished business in his heart. It seems that every word is killing the heart, but in fact it is like the next time, it is all false. So, looking at Alan's increasingly weak face, Sand Crocodile whispered in Alan's ear and continued to cite, you might as well let me go now, and then I will give you scorpion venom. The antidote, as you said, my plan has failed, and then I will leave this country and go to a place that has nothing to do with you, and then continue to plan for the rest of my time. How? Second Division. Sand Crocodile said a lot for such a long time. But the bottom line is that he wants Alan to let go of himself. As for the conditions and things like that. Understand. However, when it comes to speaking skills, although Alan dare not say that he is an expert in this field, he feels that he is already at the level of a teacher. Sand Crocodile's tirade did nothing but make Alan feel a little drowsy. Quote. Alan didn't answer. Or maybe he didn't have the strength to gossip with Sand Crocodile again. The body became weaker and weaker, the vision gradually blurred, and even the consciousness gradually slowed down. Alan didn't listen to what Sand Crocodile said. He just feels so sleepy now and wants to sleep. Close your eyes, lie down on the soft big bed that can roll back and forth dozens of times, and fall asleep. In this trance, Alan seemed to have returned to the past. Campfire, beach, starry sky, and the wishes of the three young men under Gecko talking to each other. I am sorry, Lunla, my vow to you may not be fulfilled, Desert Kingdom. Is it a little too dry here? Will I be mummified when I die? At this time Alan's thinking became a little more active, but he was very detached. 3 things in one sentence. With such a question in his heart, Alan still couldn't resist the sleepiness like the claws of the abyss, and slowly closed his eyes. Only at the last moment, Alan seemed to hear someone calling his name. Alan. Is it Joa and Alva? Don't worry too much, I'll go look for you right away. This was Alan's last thought. Chapter 275-follow-up. Meanwhile, Robin and Luffy's side. Robin captured Cobra and walked not far. He was blocked by Sergeant Tashigi of Marine's headquarters. Holding Wajo, one of the 50 workers of Liangyiwu, Tashigi and his soldiers stopped Robin with a dignified face. He was talking about the crime of the Sand Crocodile Gang. If it were Robin in the past, he might still be interested in playing with these Marines, but now Robin will soon see the historical text he is thinking about. I really don't have the mood to waste time with these Marines. Robin is an archaeologist by profession and understands the text of history. It is also because of the historical text that led to the tragedy as a child, and the reason why Robin has been in the dark for so many years. But it's ridiculous, except that Robin had a close contact with the historical text with the scholars above in O'Hara when he was a child, and he has never met him for so many years. Alabasta today is the second piece of Robin's experience in these years. It is for this purpose that Robin hides beside Sand Crocodile. The tragedy as a child and the years of experience have made Robin's emotions a little complicated for the historical text. Everyone has a meaning to live, and her meaning now is to see with her own eyes what is written in another piece of historical text. But all that happened to Robin is also for the very reason that the historical text exists. It's the belief that keeps Robin alive, and the culprit behind Robin's traumatic experiences over the years. But one thing that cannot be changed is that Robin is now very eager to see what is recorded in the historical text of Alabasta. She wanted to see if the content recorded in the historical text was worth her childhood past, as well as her years of experience. Robin didn't want to go on procrastinating. Looking at the large number of Marine Robin in front of him, he put his hands on his chest and activated his ability directly. Under the influence of Huahuaguo, I saw a pair of white and slender arms stretched out strangely from the soldiers in the front row of Marine. Under Robin's idea, he grabbed the Marine soldier's neck. After hearing a crisp twisting sound, the soldiers in the first row fell down. The spine was directly twisted and broken, affecting the blood vessels. A trace of blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Obviously not alive. However, Robin's actions looked cruel and heartless. But it actually stayed. Otherwise, with the ability of Wawa fruit, if Robin wanted to, all the Marines who stood in front of her would have to die. Including Tashigi. After all, Tashigi's strength has not yet reached a certain level. If you can't break free from Robin's joint skills, and if you can't dodge in time, the ending is obvious. Robin isn't a murderer either. Getting rid of a few Marines is enough to act as a deterrent. Don't get in the way. Hurry up and get out of the way. Keeping his arms together, Robin was in a state where he could activate his abilities again at any time. Looking at Tashigi in front of him, he said with a cold voice on his face. It doesn't have any taste. Watching his subordinates get rid of a few people by Robin without any resistance, Tashigi, the sergeant of the Marine headquarters, is a little naive, but he is not a fool. Although it is not clear what Robin's ability is, from the situation just now, the woman in front of her definitely has the ability to eliminate all the soldiers behind her. The lack of strength of his subordinates is so deadlocked here, and there is no other meaning other than the sacrifice of life in vain. In addition, King Cobra next to him said that the square was about to explode. Tashigi thought to himself for a moment and then said out loud to disperse the soldiers behind him, Sergeant. Take everyone to the square and make sure to stop the explosion. Although Tashigi said the words to retreat, her own feet seemed to have taken root, and they were firmly fixed in place. If you let Tashigi let Robin go like this, she will definitely be unwilling. She's not that kind of person either. What's more, Robin still has the king of this country in his hands, and it is impossible for Tashigi to retreat like this. The order in Tashigi's mouth, the marine soldiers behind him began to retreat in an orderly manner. And the sergeant who was just named by Tashigi looked at the back of the girl who didn't move at all and wanted to say something, but was stopped by Tashigi. Boss. Come on. Be sure to stop the explosion. Don't let innocent lives go to waste in this desert. Tashigi once again put on a stance to stand in front of Robin, and shouted at the sergeant behind him without looking back. Quote. Yes. After being silent for a while, the sergeant took his order decisively and followed the soldiers out of here. Tashigi were left in the field, as well as a cobra. Okay, let him go. Holding Wajo, one of the 50 workers in Liangyiwu, Tashigi stopped in front of Robin and shouted righteously. Hear this. Nicole Robin's beautiful eyes narrowed into a dangerous arc. It is not mentioned here for the time being. Let's look back to the square. Originally, when Luffy and Alan went to defeat the sand crocodile together, Alan, who had already noticed the existence of the trigger, spoke out to remind the Straw Hat Gang and inform them of the location of the trigger. And just in case, a few more suspicious locations were mentioned. It saved a lot of time for Princess Vivi and the others. After they solved the trigger, they walked over in the direction of the palace because they thought about the situation of Eren and Luffy. And Vivi, although the girl is also worried about the situation of her partner, the current war is the point that makes the girl even more worried. Coupled with the sandstorm that just stopped suddenly, if it is blocked at this time, it is not impossible to stop the war that is already halfway through. Nami could see exactly what Vivi was thinking. After a few words of dissuasion, the team was proposed. Vivi took Sanji and Usopp to stay here. Nami led the remaining Zoro chopper to the direction of the palace to support Luffy and Alan. The Plaza rescue team is here. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the palace, he saw the collapsed gravel. Nami and the others turned over the rubble and caught sight of Eren, who fell on the sand crocodile, and the blood under the two of them. He couldn't help but shouted anxiously, Ellen. Then he rushed over and pulled Alan up, wanting to let Chopper check Alan's condition. These are bad things. Chapter 276-True. End. Ellen. Looking at Ellen, who was lying on the sand crocodile, who didn't know if he was alive or dead, Nami rushed over anxiously. Alan was pulled up. This time it's bad. Seastone, Alan also has the consideration of being easy to carry. The short knife he hid in his left arm was not too long. After the left hand is clenched into a fist, a small section can be leaked out. Other words, Alan's seastone dagger can barely sink into the belly of the sand crocodile. Use the side effects of devil fruit to restrain sand crocodile. But with Nami's pull. Although I know that I am worried about Ellen's condition, I want to check it. But now if Ellen is still conscious, he will definitely complain about Nami's impulsiveness. The physical fitness of the characters in the One Piece King of Pirates world is inherently stronger. Even if half of his head was knocked off by someone, he could still survive for a while. What's more, it was simply a hole that was stabbed by someone. Accompanied by Nami's movements, Sand Crocodile rolled away as expected from the crowd in an instant. Not at all involved in the injury to the waist. Ha ha ha, thank you so much, you idiots. There was still blood flowing from the wound on his waist, but the Sand Crocodile didn't notice its existence at all. Rescued by Nami, he laughed wildly on his face. What? Zoro was instantly alert, and pulled out two knives in his hands to block Nami in front of him. Thank you. Nami handed Eren to Chopper. After getting up and taking out the weather stick, she looked at the embarrassed sand crocodile with some doubts. No need thank me. Don't you guys know? Nami's question was heard by Sand Crocodile. She raised her eyebrows and made up her mind to cause Alan some trouble. It's ridiculous, is this your so-called partner? That guy hid a seastone dagger in his body, and he didn't know who he was guarding against. Sand Crocodile glanced at the two of them meaningfully, and then continued, even his companion's past experience, don't you know? The relationship between you is really unbearable. Laughing. Sea stone. Knife. After Sand Crocodile's reminder, Nami couldn't help but glance back at Alan, who handed it to Chopper. With Zoro present, as there are few reliable people on board, Nami is still very reassured about Zoro. Zoro will remind himself if something happens. That's why Nami looked behind her with confidence. As soon as she turned her head, this time, after being reminded by Sand Crocodile, Nami saw that Alan's short knife was sticking out directly from her arm. He covered his mouth involuntarily. When she just came over, all her attention was on Alan's physical condition, and she didn't notice the sea stone knife in his hand. Just now Nami turned Eren over and the crocodile suddenly stood up. Facing the powerful enemy Nami and handing Eren to Chopper, she didn't pay much attention. At this time, when I saw it clearly, I couldn't help but exclaimed. How? With a look of disbelief. What kind of experience can make a person hide a weapon in the body alive? Ha 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 ha, this is your so-called companion. From your expression, you don't seem to know about this. Sand Crocodile laughed while watching Nami's shocked expression. It seems that this guy from the second team has a lot to hide from you. As a person who has seen his methods, I will give you a piece of advice. For that guy, you must mention 10,000 cautions and cautions. It's not too difficult for him to betray his companions. You never know that what he said is true and what is false. Maybe this guy from the second team wants to get something from you. What he calls helping you deal with me now may also be in exchange for your trust. Trust me, this guy from the second team is definitely the kind of person who has killed you countless times in his heart, but he can still smile on the surface. Sand Crocodile maliciously slandered Alan. But in a sense, what Sand Crocodile said was actually not wrong. Because Alan is indeed such a person. Impossible. Alan is not that kind of person. Hearing Sand Crocodile's words, Nami clenched the weather stick in her hand. His face was full of affirmation and stubbornness. Oh, are you really that sure? Little girl. Sand Crocodile looked at Nami with an indescribable expression on his face. Continue to provoke Ellen's impression in the Straw Hat Gang. Nami was a little excited when she heard Sand Crocodile's words. She wanted to say something but was stopped by Zoro next to her. Okay Nami, believe in yourself, believe in Ellen. No one will push themselves to a dead end in order to gain trust, and... Raising the snow in his hand, Zoro stopped Na with the back of his knife. Beautiful. A pair of eyes looked dangerously at the Sand Crocodile. His purpose now is to let us look at Alan according to his thoughts, and don't fall for him, Zoro said, explaining Sand Crocodile's thoughts. Nami didn't respond, just nodded silently. Then now, after glancing at Nami's action beside him, Zoro clenched the snow in his hands and the 3 generations of Kikito's eyes fell on Sand Crocodile again. Your opponent is us. I haven't tried to hunt crocodiles. A wild smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Zoro didn't care about his injuries at all. Frankly speaking, he wants to cut down the Sand Crocodile. Hee, it's ridiculous. What kind of character Sand Crocodile is? He can still smile back when provoked by a little nameless swordsman like Zoro who jumped out of nowhere. Immediately, his eyes narrowed. Don't think that I am an enemy you can deal with when I am injured. Gently stroking the golden hook in his hand, Sand Crocodile said with a cold face. Oh, let's give it a try. He took out the words Hidao from his waist and put it in his mouth. Zoro was already ready for a big battle. But who knew that at this time, Sand Crocodile gave up voluntarily. Zoro with fighting intent on his face, Sand Crocodile put down the golden hook raised in his hand and said, You should be concerned about the second division first. He is probably not far away from death. I hope he will sooner than later. Have left their last words, and you have a suitable coffin on board. As soon as the voice fell, the Sand Crocodile was directly elementalized, and flew away in front of the 2. Chapter 277 _ So hard. Looking at the back of Sand Crocodile leaving quickly, Zoro and Nami looked at each other. Both read the doubts in each other's eyes. Mainly Nami. He just left. Nami asked Zoro with a surprised face. Let's go, let's go. Looking at the back of Sand Crocodile's departure, Zoro slowly retracted the three-handed knife to his waist. After simply responding to Nami's sentence, he turned to look at Chopper, who was examining Ellen's body. Chopper, how's Ellen? Zoro is a very simple person. He never wastes his brain on this kind of thing, he puts all his spare time and mind on exercise. Can't figure it out, Zoro isn't an idiot. That's not necessary. Nami next to him looked at the back of Sand Crocodile, who was eager to leave, although she was still puzzled and worried, but she saw that Zoro did not continue to waste her time on this matter. There is no need for her to worry about where she is alone. He took the weather stick in his hand back into his arms and moved to Chopper's side. Ellen isn't going to die, right? Chopper, Nami asked with a worried look on her face again. Don't look at Chopper's petite figure, it is inconvenient to face tall creatures like humans. But as a ship's physician, he was not slow. Just as Nami's Zoro faced off against the Sand Crocodile, Chopper had simply dealt with the wound on Alan's left hand. At this time, he was putting his ear on Alan's chest to check Ellen's status. After hearing the question from the two, Chopper raised his head from Alan's chest, with a solemn expression on his face. Not so good. What's wrong? He was quite confident in Chopper's medical skills. Nami. There is no confidence and no way, and now there is only a doctor like Chopper in the field. Chopper's face at this moment, Nami couldn't help clenching the collar on her chest. Alan was poisoned by two kinds of poisons. The first is the sense of stability he prepared himself, which is not harmful, but the second type of coagulation poison is the deadly thing. If it can't be dealt with in time, the little Chopper's face was full of solemnity at the moment, his eyes fell on Alan, and he said, "We'll die." Nami lowered her head, her hand gripping the collar getting harder and harder, and her fingertips that didn't return blood gradually turned white. Is there a solution? What do we need to do? Nami was a little overwhelmed, but Zoro wasn't too flustered. Holding the knife at his waist tightly, he took over the topic. But I don't need to do anything. I have some antidote that I have prepared on weekdays. It can't be detoxified, but it can temporarily control the poison in Alan's body. After the matter is over, I will find herbal medicine to heal it. Alan has time too, Chopper said from behind, and took out a few test tubes, which contained colorful potions. Handed it in front of the two of them and glanced at it, quickly poured it into Alan's mouth, and then said, "That's good." Nami was obviously relieved, and then she said again, "Isn't the poison already solved, Chopper? Then how can Ellen?" Nami didn't say the next words, but Chopper understood the meaning. Although the poison thing can be solved, but Chopper's gaze shifted to Alan's left hand. Seastone dagger that pierced the blood vessels directly from the body and flowed out of the skin was continuously bleeding for Alan. Alan's physical fitness is incomparable to the people in this world. He falls into the category of normal people. Take the Sand Crocodile just now as an example. After he was stabbed by Alan, he could talk, taunt, and run away as if nothing had happened. But if Alan was stabbed by someone, it would be an exaggeration to lose the ability to fight directly. But it does have an impact on action. The overall physical quality is much worse than that of people in this world. And Alan's seastone short knife hidden in his arm is a big killer, but after the shot, the battle must be quickly resolved. Otherwise, the impact of blood loss on Alan would still be great. Seastone short knife in Alan's left hand is a big move. But after the shot, you will put a negative effect of continuous blood loss on yourself. And Alan was born with a lower blood bar than the people in this world. A person with a little bit of strength is tens of thousands of drops of blood at every turn, and if a drop is lost every second, he can casually spend more than half an hour. But not Alan. This unattended continuous blood loss would kill Alan. That's why Chopper said Alan would die. But I can't stop the bleeding with this knife, Chopper said, taking his eyes away from Ellen and looking at Nami and Zoro. Seastone. A short knife. Looking at the short knife in Alan's left hand, Nami murmured softly, "What an idiot." Zoro. Nami turned her gaze to Zoro beside her and asked. Quote. After hearing Nami's voice, Zoro was silent for a moment and then said, "Since the blood cannot be stopped because of the existence of the knife." Zoro paused for a while. Then he slowly pulled out the word Hidao from his waist. An unpleasant emotion flooded Nami's heart. "Hey, you don't mean to." "That's right. Just chop off his arm." "Are you going to kill him, asshole?" Chopper suddenly screamed. "Calm down, Zoro. It's not good to cut off your partner's arm at will." Nami hurriedly stopped in front of Zoro, intending to stop his dangerous thoughts. "Yes, although not left-handed, the left hand is still very important." Yeah, calm down, Zoro, the left hand is very important." A voice came from behind, and Nami nodded in confusion. But halfway through, he suddenly reacted, who is talking?" Nami turned her head and saw Alan slowly sitting up from the ground. "You're awake, Alan." With a smile gradually overflowing on her face, Nami squatted down and looked at the man in front of him who was struggling again from the line of life and death and said with joy, "Thank you for worrying, I managed to survive." With a soft smile on his face, Alan nodded to Nami, then looked at Chopper. "Thank you so much, Chopper, it is worthy of the name of the panacea. The peerless doctor." He praised without hesitation. Hearing this, the little Chopper became shy again. "A peerless doctor or something. Even if you praise me like that, I won't be happy, you bastard tilde. Chapter 278 Alan moved his numb body and slowly sat up from the ground. Survived again. Spitting out the blood in his mouth, Alan looked at the people in front of him and said with a smile, "When did you come here? Did you meet Luffy on the way?" The words were light, without the slightest feeling of being pulled back to the world from the embrace of death. "Open your eyes and ask about the current situation." Zoro raised his eyebrows, and Nami continued, "It didn't take long. I didn't see Luffy. Where did he go?" "Didn't you meet?" Alan nodded, and didn't ignore Nami's question. He spat out the blood that formed again in his mouth and replied, "The sand crocodile followed a woman and grabbed the king. I asked Luffy to follow him just to prevent accidents. Is it all right for you to let that idiot go?" Nami didn't mean to distrust Luffy's ability, she just doubted who would know who Vivi's father was according to Luffy's mind. Although the two are a boy and a girl, the fool knows that only a man can be a father, but if it is Luffy? Not necessarily. With Robin's IQ, Luffy might have been fooled by a few words. Looking at Nami's suspicious eyes, Alan sighed, took the potion that Chopper handed over and drank it, and then asked back, "What do you think of me at that time? Is there anyone else to arrange this?" "That's what I said. Also." Nami smirked and waved her hand. "Forget it, these things don't matter. Let's follow Luffy to see now. That idiot was not Sand Crocodile's opponent. Now if it's 2-on-1, Luffy will definitely lose." A tube of potion entered his mouth. Alan felt inexplicably better from the wound on his tongue. I couldn't help but sigh that Chopper, the reindeer doctor, was very skilled in medicine, and he kept talking to help Luffy. As for why Alan wasn't surprised at all about the sand crocodile escape, it was mainly because he had already guessed it. As early as when he was awake, Alan had already guessed what happened by listening to the conversation of the trio in his ear. Now there are two forces in the field, the Straw Hats on Vivi's side, and the assassination organization on Sand Crocodile's side. If the Straw Hats were the first to arrive, because they didn't know the sea stone in Alan's arm, the Sand Crocodile escaped. The first to arrive was the assassination organization under Sand Crocodile. Crocodile still had the strength to speak at that time, and also fled. Whoever gets to Sand Crocodile first is an escape. And the strength of Sand Crocodile's side has been almost solved by the Straw Hat Gang, and there is a high chance that the first person to arrive here is his own side. It's just that Alan was a little surprised that he didn't expect the Nami trio to arrive so early. According to Alan's idea, he wanted to rely on Seastone's restraint on the capable ones to let the sand crocodile save a little more blood. Even if Crocodile did not end up dying from excessive blood loss, it would be greatly slowed down. Sand crocodile fighting power. But since the support came so quickly, Alan had no other idea. If the sand crocodile is not dead, then find another opportunity to kill him. Everyone has already run away, and now to say something of a complaining nature has no meaning other than to demoralize. The top priority now is to support Luffy first, he said, watching the three people in front of him, Alan, standing up from the ground. Don't let anything happen. Alan really couldn't imagine how the world would change if Luffy died here. Aside from the mysterious things like the will of the world, the identity of Luffy alone is enough to make the whole world tremble. Marine hero Garp know, my captain's grandfather. Does the Revolutionary Army leader Long know? My captain's dad. Do you know Ace, the captain of the 2nd Division under Whitebeard? My captain's eldest brother. Do you know Sabo, Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Army? My captain's second brother. Do you know the Redhead, one of the 4 emperors? That's my captain's lead. Not to mention Kizaru, one of the 3 Admiral Marines, that is my captain's second uncle. Manual Doghead. This is only what is there, and what has not happened after that has not been counted. Luffy can hide from others, but he can't hide from Ellen's eyes. If that stupid captain dies here. Alas. Alan lit a cigarette and sighed silently in his heart. Trouble. Alan muttered softly. What? Zoro with sharp ears heard Ellen's murmur and asked. Nothing. Alan shook his head, refusing to answer Zoro's question. Do you guys need a break? If not, then let's go. No, wait a second. Seeing Alan saying that he was going to leave as if he had nothing to do, Nami hurriedly stopped him. You still have injuries on your body now. You first remove the knife from your arm, let Chopper stop the bleeding for you, and then we're going. Nami nodded. Ellen's arm was ticking and falling. With the blood-drenched knife, he said anxiously. Really, one by one does not make people worry. Ah, you said this. Alan looked down at his left arm. Don't care about it, just need. Slightly. Such a force. Hey. As Alan spoke, the blade of the seastone dagger held in his free right hand, with such force upward, saw that the dagger fell into Alan's arm. Middle. The muscle fibers rubbed against the cold steel sounded with a crisp organ-knocking sound. The seastone dagger slammed into the bone heavily, announcing that the weapon was folded. In front of Nami, Alan violently retracted his unique weapon back into his body. Looking at Nami, she frowned. To be honest, Nami has been drifting on this sea for a long time, and she has seen all kinds of people. But this is the first time I've seen a guy like Alan who hides a weapon directly in his body. And this man is his partner. Shock, intolerance, sympathy, curiosity, all kinds of emotions echoed in Nami's heart. In the end it just turned into a short sentence, you. Doesn't it hurt? Pain or something? I'm used to it. Taking a deep breath, Alan calmly returned. Okay, don't talk about such trivial things. Since we don't need a rest, let's go. Squeezing out the half cigarette left in his hand, Alan said to set off. But right here, Chopper suddenly said, wait a minute Alan. Chapter 279 Chopper _ What's wrong, Chopper? After hearing the voice of the reindeer, Nami looked at Chopper suspiciously. I don't know why the group pet suddenly stopped the others. But at this time Chopper did not answer Nami's question. The cute and fluffy face in the past was full of seriousness, looking at Alan's eyes and asking. Ellen, you are also a doctor. You should be very aware of your own physical condition. You have lost too much blood, and the scorpion venom in your body has not been resolved. Coupled with your own sense of stability, you can't even stand still. None. Chopper's voice made Nami and Zoro's eyes turn to Ellen. You don't even have the strength to stand. Looking at Ellen, who was standing as if nothing had happened, Nami had doubts in her eyes. I don't know, do you know what to do? Just as Chopper's voice fell, Alan lit a cigarette again and asked back. Why do you still do this if you know it clearly? The medicine only has the effect of slowing down, and has no detoxification effect at all. If you still think about acting rashly, the blood flow will speed up and you will die. This at that time, Chopper was not at all cute and well-behaved in the past, and the whole person suddenly changed from a small one to a fierce man with a height of 8 feet. Looking down at Ellen, he shouted a little emotionally. Huh, so what? Alan frowned and glanced sideways at the tall and mighty Chopper beside him. He asked with a calm expression in his eyes. Hearing Ellen's answer, Chopper was stunned for a moment, then furious. You bastard, you're going to die. Arms open, Chopper grabbed Alan's collar and dragged it in front of him. Let him look into his eyes with a deliberately suppressed anger in his voice. Hey, Chopper Alan, the two of you. Seeing the two of them fighting each other, Nami on the side sighed inwardly, took a step forward, and waved her hands to pull the two away, wanting to be a peacemaker. Now the big enemy, the sand crocodile, has not been solved yet. On his own side, he was the first to quarrel. As he spoke, he wanted to separate the two. But just after Nami took this step, Zoro, who was beside him, suddenly stretched out his hand, and the words in his hand blocked Nami's face. A familiar scene once again caught Nami's eyes. Zoro. She took her eyes away from the long knife in front of her, and Nami glanced at Zoro next to her in confusion. I don't know what he meant. The two goods over there are already pinched together, and if they don't pull the two people apart, they will fight for a while. What did you stop me for? Zoro saw the doubts in Nami's eyes, but didn't answer. He just shook his head silently, and the word Hidauyi was firmly placed in front of Nami. He was determined not to let Nami go. You guy. Out of trust in her partner, although Nami was a little worried about the two guys over there who were about to fight, but looking at Zoro's look that she would not let herself go, Nami also he could only sigh helplessly. I prayed in my heart not to fight, and returned to my position. And over there. Looking at the anger that was deliberately endured but still visible in Chopper's eyes, Alan took a deep breath. Alan can understand Chopper's mood. Think about it from another perspective. If Joa is now with an injury that is about to die, and wants to go to the battlefield again to fight the enemy, and Alan, as a doctor, has the ability to save Joa, but Joa is dead and alive. He just didn't listen to Alan's words and wanted to go to the battlefield to die. Whether it is from the family's point of view or the doctor's point of view, Alan can discount Chow Ya's legs. The situation between Chopper and Alan is about the same. Whether from a partner's perspective or a doctor's perspective, Chopper couldn't allow himself to watch Alan kill himself. But understanding is understanding, but Alan does not agree with Chopper's idea. Old pun dog. Ellen is Chopper, Hoya is Ellen, then Ellen can discount Chopper's legs and prevent her from going out. But in the current situation, Alan willfully doesn't want to agree with Chopper's approach. There is no reason for him, just because. The Straw Hat Pirates are still too weak. Alan sighed in his heart. Looking up into Chopper's eyes, don't you understand Chopper? Understand what? Looking at Alan looking like he had something to say, the anger in Chopper's eyes subconsciously subsided. Hey, Zoro, can you slash the sand crocodile who is the Logia fruit power user? Alan didn't rush to answer Chopper's question, but asked Zoro behind him. Logia. Zoro slowly retracted the words Hidao into the scabbard around his waist, said a noun in his mouth, and then fell silent. Although Zoro wanted to say a good word, now is not the time to be brave. No answer is the best answer. Look, even Zoro can't cut the sand crocodile, so. After getting Zoro's reply, Alan patted Chopper's furry arm and motioned him to put himself down first. Chopper let go of his hand subconsciously, and his body returned to its original appearance. Alan stroked the folds on his chest, squatted down and looked at Chopper. His eyes were soft, but the words in his mouth seemed a little arrogant. So you think Luffy, or anyone here, can still hit the sand? Is the crocodile guy there? Quote. Chopper was silent, because Alan was right. Chopper, who lowered his head and couldn't see the emotion in his eyes, but showed his blue nose. Alan reached out and nodded. Some moist touches entered Alan's nerves along his fingertips, and a smile appeared on his face. You have to understand, Chopper, some things can't be stopped by death. In Alan's mind, the man who faced the muzzle of the gun but still stood in front of him appeared again. But, Alan tapped his more sensitive nose. Chopper could not help shrinking his neck, then raised his head to look at Alan, and wanted to say something but was interrupted by Alan. Nothing. Am I going to lie here and watch you die? Alan stood up, his language harsh but soft. Chopper raised his head following Alan's movements and looked at Alan. Let's make a manly promise. Chopper, do you remember what you said when you landed? Alan looked down at the little Chopper and said with a chuckle. What did you say when you went ashore? Chopper's memory was moved by Alan's words and returned to the time when he went ashore. Don't worry, with me, no matter how serious your injuries are, I will see you healed. Memory gradually became clear, and Chopper was stunned for a moment. I don't know if you remember, but I haven't. Alan nodded his head. I'll leave my body to you, show your medical skills and cure me. I hope there will be a place for me at the banquet after the battle. How, Chopper? Alan looked at Chopper. Chopper nodded earnestly and forcefully, yeah. Chapter 280-excessive, you can ignore it. On the way to the site of the historical text, the tomb of the royal palace. Nami's group hurried towards here. Turn left, go straight, then turn right. Idiot, you're turning in the wrong direction. Who do you call a scar-faced bastard? You were clearly pointing in the wrong direction just now. You green-haired bastard. There were two forks at the intersection just now. I pointed to the left and you turned to the side. You still have the face to blame me for pointing in the wrong direction. It's all my fault that these intersections are so similar, and you bastards rambling, that's why I don't have a clear direction. Anyway, just don't admit that he is a road idiot. You idiot, you are a Luna. But unfortunately, Zoro's little trick was revealed by Alan in one word. He didn't leave the slightest sympathy for the world's greatest swordsman in the future. You're a lunatic, you scar-faced bastard. After Alan revealed his cute point, Zoro blushed and quickly defended. I'm a lunatic. Stop making excuses for yourself, you green-haired bastard. Alan scolded angrily, then continued with a playful, sarcastic tone. I really didn't expect it to have a face like yours. A vicious guy would have such characteristics. Road idiot. Haha, when you become the world's #1 swordsman in the future, I will definitely publicize this matter and let the whole world know that Roronoa Zoro is a road idiot thing. Alan's face was filled with a wild smile. You can give it a try, but before that, I'll definitely cut you. You scar-faced bastard. Zoro looked at Alan next to him with murderous intent on his face. Oh, that's all. Alan looked at Zoro with contempt, and a disdainful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. How to see how to play. You bastard. Zoro was exasperated. But then the expression on his face changed, the original anger disappeared in an instant, and there was a deliberate ease on his face. No matter what, I will be stronger than you. I don't know who it is. I just talked big. What comrade still needs me to save tilde death can't stop me tilde. But what about now? Hee. As soon as the word, hee, blurted out, Zoro raised his shoulders, as if he was pointing at the guy he was carrying on his shoulders. That's Ellen. Now the situation between the two is really turning around. At that time, when Zoro finished solving Mr. One and headed towards the palace, it was Alan who was carrying him. But now, the roles are reversed. Because of the toxins in Alan's body, although Chopper finally agreed to Alan's proposal to help. But as a condition, Alan was required to maintain a relatively calm state before arriving at the place, that is to say, not to be too vigorous. Otherwise, if the blood flow accelerated, the temporarily suppressed scorpion venom would erupt again, and by that time, even Chopper would not be able to rescue him. So after some discussion among the three, it was finally decided that Zoro would carry Eren to the palace tomb. Then it's time to fight. It can also temporarily delay the onset of toxins. So it became the current situation. Zoro shoulders Ellen, followed by Nami Chopper. Go straight to the direction of the king's tomb. Alan locked in the sand crocodile's breath. You bastard, let me down, I can walk by myself. Zoro meant so clearly, how could Eren hadn't noticed. Hearing this, he was instantly discouraged, like a defeated rooster, his head was downcast. There was no love written all over his face. There is no way, the posture of the two is too embarrassing for Ellen. Head forward, butt back, back up, face down. Alan has lived for so long, whether it is in the previous generation or this life, it is the first time that he has been resisted on his shoulders in such a posture. I always feel a little ashamed, and my lower body is slightly cold. Hey, you are arrogant. Zoro laughed wildly in his heart, and at the same time bumped his shoulders again, ignoring Alan's struggles. A serious face in front of his eyes, he said seriously, don't struggle, Alan, you have to think about the overall situation. Isn't Ellen's favorite thing to talk about for the sake of the bigger picture. Now Zoro chokes Ellen with these words. It's serious, I can't talk about the overall situation. I just have a sea-stone short knife, and it's the same for anyone who comes here. Didn't you say that strenuous exercise is not allowed? Normal rushing is not considered strenuous exercise. Let me get down for a walk, otherwise this kind of work will trouble you. Alan didn't change his mind and continued. As he spoke, he wanted Zoro to put himself down. How could Zoro, who finally caught Eren's embarrassing incident, just let Alan go? On the way to the palace, Alan laughed at Zoro a lot. Zoro wanted to come down at that time, didn't Eren not let it go? Tit for tit, now is the time, you come. After hearing Ellen's words, Zoro shook his head for a while. If the speed was a little faster, the afterimage could be seen. No, how can things between companions be troublesome? You are the main force to deal with the sand crocodile in the future. If you fall here again, no one will be able to deal with the Logia fruit power user like the sand crocodile. This is right, one said after another. How can I never see you so good at talking in normal times? Alan muttered to himself. Actually, it's nothing. Sand crocodile is just a Logia. I have sea-stone in my hand, although I can restrain him, but you know my current physical condition. Whoever comes is not the same. When you find out the flaws of the sand crocodile, you can directly use me as a hidden weapon to sacrifice. Don't worry, I won't suggest it at all. Alan nodded seriously. I made up my mind to be a tool man. But again, how could Zoro just let Alan go? Later, if Alan dared to talk about what happened when he went to the palace, then Zoro could refute it with today's incident. I was so stubborn in my heart that I made up my mind that I couldn't let Alan down. He shook his head for a while. No way. How can we do this? We are partners. I can't do something like throwing you out as a hidden weapon. Zoro said with a deep expression. If it wasn't for the looming smile on the corner of his mouth, Alan would have almost believed it. Who are you fooling? It's not you who said when I was in a coma that I wanted to chop off my arm. Alan lay on Zoro's shoulder and rolled his eyes silently.